Welcome to the April 23rd, 2019 school board meeting of the Shorewood School District, and welcome to our newest school board member, Emily Berg. All right, I'd like to first adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda. Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Davis, can you remind us of our overarching result?
Yes, our overarching result for the school district of Shorewood is our students are leaders who challenge themselves to grow and achieve academically, pursue their passions, navigate change, learn continuously, and contribute to the common good.
Thank you. Awards and recognitions?
First of all, I'd like to send a big thank you to all that supported the SIS 7th grade students in beginning their capstone projects this past week. First annual capstone fair was a big success, and students and partner organizations alike thought that the event was very valuable. The 7th graders now have chosen a research project and 2 research questions that they will be working on in their World Geo class. Ultimately, the students will report their findings at the end of 8th grade in their 2020 passage presentations, which will be coming up next year. So thanks for everyone who participated in that. Next, want to thank all of everyone who participated in and helped organize the Tradition of Excellence ceremony early in the month. The 4 distinguished alumni and former staff members who were honored included Nancy Lee Weeks Koss, class of 1950, James Meiser, class of 1976, and former staff members Barbara Gensler and Elmer Jacobson. So it was a great experience for everybody involved, and to learn more about the honorees, you can visit the district website. Also like to acknowledge Shorewood alum Andrew Talon, class of 1987, who has been featured extensively in the news as he may be the key to helping architects and engineers rebuild Notre Dame Cathedral following the unfortunate fire that had happened recently. Talon, a scholar of medieval architecture and acoustics, used lasers and painstakingly scanned the cathedral in 2015, giving us a nearly perfect digital replica of the Gothic structure. Sadly, Talon passed away last December, but his digital model will be a crucial piece of the restoration efforts because it details exactly what the church looked like before the fire's destruction. So we were lucky to call him a graduate, and you can find more information out about him on our district website also. I'd next like to congratulate Atwater reading interventionist Kate Sebastian, who was recently honored by Carroll University as an early career leader. Congratulations, Kate. Let's see. Award recipients were selected based on the positive impact on schools and communities, advocacy for students, and positive leadership throughout the organization. So congratulations to Kate for this great honor. Athletics, congratulations to the SHS girls varsity and JV soccer teams who started their season off with 4-0 records. The varsity team is currently ranked 7th in the state in Division III, and we hope to continue rising to the top. So keep up the great work for both of those teams. Also, kudos to the SHS track and field relay teams for winning their events at the Milwaukee United Relay recently. This includes the varsity girls 4x8 800 team of Felicity Hayde, Annika Elliott, Marcella Yatso, and Addie Kemp. JV girls 4x100 team, Lily Hudson, Anna Saudi Dusold, Maya Muchala, and Paisley Losier. So congratulations to those ladies, and then also the varsity boys 4x100 team, Nico Barker, Amarian Davis, Charles Kerniging, and Jeremiah Cote. So congratulations to all those athletes, and keep up the great work, and we hope for sunshine and no more snow for all of the outdoor sports. So, and that concludes the recognitions for tonight.
Great, thank you. All right, so tonight we're going to start off our student achievements and results presentation with a presentation from New Horizons.
Thank you. This evening we are pleased to share our work at New Horizons with the board and the community. We have strong representation here from New Horizons. Gavin, we have Jack, we have Percy, we have Devin, Dylan, Jaden, and our own Mr. H, who is from the first graduating class of New Horizons and who is now a teacher with New Horizons as part of the team. We'd like to basically walk the community through a project that has three primary components. I will describe sort of the overarching piece, and then the students will elaborate from there. I know they have a lot to say. With the first slide, the bottom half is as clear as I'd like it to be, but New Horizons for Learning Charter School provides a learning setting for 24 students. We cover grades 9 through 12. We integrate our curriculum, and we use an authentic learning approach and style to what we do. In efforts to take what we learn in the classroom, we provide collectively projects, experiences, excursions for students to take learning beyond the classroom and carry what's learned in the classroom to the community. This particular project we titled Fostering Equity. Equity has been a very, very important part of professional development over the past 2 years, and something introduced by Dr. Davies to our faculty. And that being something that is of primary importance to make sure that within each classroom, within each setting, and the opportunity for each student to understand how to address equity and be part of something to impact community, we decided to tend to equity, not necessarily just go through curriculum and move on, but something that we evaluate, we reflect upon, and that we incorporate into everything that we do. Okay. The way that we organized are, and if I could just backtrack here, 3 primary components to this particular project of fostering equity. If you look to the left, it's an image that was taken at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Through their Center for Humanities, the university offers something called the Great World Text Program, and a committee selects a piece of work by authors from various cultures around the world, and then we build our experiences around that. And in spring, about 1,000 high school students from the state of Wisconsin gather at the university at Union South, and typically we meet the author. This year we read A Small Place. The author is Jamaica Kincaid. Jamaica Kincaid was experiencing serious health issues leading up to the summit, but the university offered someone who really filled her shoes well and provided students with ample feedback for questions. The center photo focuses on work that we've been doing out in the community. New Horizons and the students have been really invested in Harambe community and working at Peace Park off of Dr. Martin Luther King Drive and a Victory Over Violence Park. And the partnering groups have been Heart Love Family Place and Groundwork Milwaukee. This particular photo is the second component of our work, and we're building 27 lending libraries. Those libraries then are donated to various parks and focus on a project with Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary School students as creating lending libraries within the school that are made into art pieces. And then with a colleague, Renee Glendon, who is also one of the team at New Horizons, she has been instrumental in providing children's books donated by Next Door Foundation. So New Horizons students go into the classroom, read with students, and those books stay within the school. The last piece on the right is an experience that takes us beyond the state of Wisconsin. We travel to Chicago, to North Park University, and there, through an invitation by a sociology professor, we work with university seniors. As a stakeholder, we work with high school students just outside of Inglewood. The school's called Julian High School, and they have an alternative education curriculum, and the acronym is BAM, Becoming a Man curriculum. And so the 3 groups get together and we examine the issues and the topics surrounding equity, primarily justice and education, And we build bridges beyond the district, beyond our city, and beyond our state. So, the first piece here is what we've done addressing equity through literacy. And we have one of our seniors, Gavin, who brought his project in, which is a lending library that was created as part of the work with Groundwork Milwaukee, and he incorporated that into some of the symbolism and themes focusing on the summit in Madison. Would you care to say a few words and share?
So basically what I did was I painted each side depicting a different section of the book. And so the bottom, in the book, it talks about they had a library that had been destroyed by the hurricane. And so basically they could not afford to rebuild the library, so it just sat there and destroyed. And so I put on the bottom of it, repairs pending.
Oh, inside. Oh, sorry.
And then on the back, it is depicted, it's depicting basically what the tourists see. You know, they see the luxury and how beautiful the island is, but they don't really, I guess, care what the islanders are, how they're seeing things. And then this, I painted a picture of the sugar plantation, like the sugar plantations that they had and the sugar mills. And then I put the sign for pointing to each of the different main places in the book. And then on this side I put the Mill Reef Club, which was a big place for like the richer people, and a lot of like the African Americans were the workers.
So it takes place on the island of Antigua, and we're fortunate to have a parent who lived in the island of Antigua to help educate us, and we examined some of the inequities that Gavin just shared, and then solutions and strides toward equity. Are there any other projects or comments about the summit and the experience?
Oh, not even Mike or?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Percy Duckworth. I'm a current student within New Horizons. I just want to thank Bodon, Mr. H, and Miss G. I don't know if she's here. Is she here?
I'm not sure.
Well, comments I want to say about like at the North Park University with BAM, equity was like, equity is like kind of like equal, and like with the within like the classroom showing like equalness, kind of like how I could say like an example is like everybody's treated with equal rights and everybody's treated equally. No one's like treated differently the way they're a senior, freshman, or sophomore. Everybody's treated with the equal. Sorry, my bad. I'm kind of tired. Equal respect and other things. But going on with BAM, I had a great time going there and seeing Bon's sister. She was pretty nice, pretty cool, and communicating with like the students there and like kind of like going over equity and other things with the BAM students was like really cool because like when they first saw us, they thought we were like really privileged because we go to Shorewood High School. We're like in the high privileged neighborhood, but as we talked and go over like the same struggles, they kind of like realized like, oh, they're just like us, like kind of like equities in that same part of with Shorewood and BAM, and then they kind of understand us. So it was pretty nice.
Thanks for sharing.
So basically during the whole experience, it was very talking about North Park. I was sitting actually next to a kid who had been homeless for a couple of years, and I had no idea. We were having very in-depth conversations, and he just seemed like your average guy, like nothing really wrong with him, and, you know, we talked and had a really in-depth conversation, and I didn't find out till 3 weeks after, and it just really shows, you know, when you're looking someone eye to eye, and you're talking to them, you know, you're not looking down or up, you're looking right at them, and it's just, you can talk about anything, and it really was a very amazing experience to have, talking to other people about, you know, injustice within education.
Well, as we go through the next couple of slides, maybe some more ideas will surface.
I could talk about the North Park.
Sure.
Hey, Brandon Anfield from Mr. H. I think the North Park and teaming up with BAM was very important, just because of they were able to see the inequity in each school. They was able to see a very inner city school and the students that go to that school and they struggles, and compare it to their struggles at a school like Shorewood that's very up to date with a lot of stuff. You know, they had battle with not having internet in classes and not having certain resources that we have, and it was very important for them to talk to other students who have struggles and be like, oh, y'all learn just like us. Like, it's a huge gap, but we have a lot in common. And it was very important for them to see that and, you know, just have that conversation.
Okay. So this particular component addresses equity through literacy, and a partnership through UW-Madison, something that we've been part of for 6 years now. And as I mentioned, Mrs. London was instrumental in pursuing a grant and a partnership. And we've come back to Madison and we've brought all of our students there every year since. Here you can see a plenary session presenter in the upper right in a project where a New Horizons student and representatives from each of the schools participating in the Great World Text Program had to stand up in front of 1,000 students and share their experience, their work, and what it symbolizes. To the left, we have several New Horizons students, and the whole idea of demonstrating one's learning through their choice and through their strengths is something that is important, and it's something that we bring to our projects, and something that we examine together as well. Because each of the students here, and every year those students' strengths and interests change, students bring with them experience, they bring with them ideas, they bring with them passion. And making sure that we provide space for each of the students to contribute, not just to take, but to contribute to the fostering of learning and the fostering of equity is a priority for us. And then in the bottom right is basically a shot from the side of all the students. The second component of the project I shared a little bit about, it began partnering up with Milwaukee School of Engineering, Michael Carrier, and brought us to the Peace Park. And the Peace Park was a response to what happened in Sherman Park a few years ago. And the result was the formation of a park that brought people together off of Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. And it was centered in sort of a campus. There's a high school there, Hope High School. There's Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary School. There are 2 spiritual centers on the block. There's an assisted care facility. So you have different generations there, all within walking distance from a space that was underutilized. And we thought how valuable it would be for all of us to be able to access this place and to sit. And so New Horizons a couple of years ago, we worked with a gentleman, we constructed Aldo Leopold benches because there was nowhere for community members to sit and have a conversation face to face. From that, we've been involved in tending to in the construction of raised bed garden plots. There's going to be a mobile stage there. Again, hosting events and activities by different generations, bringing people together. And so this second portion of our project focused on contributing through the construction of products. And then going back to what seems to be a very energizing and confidence-building experience, and one that I think sort of created a shift, at least in our cohort, of how my students and the young people I get a chance to work with saw themselves as learners, saw themselves as change agents, saw themselves as empowered people who are heard and are able to act. So on the left, we chose the letter of invitation formally from the university professor, the agenda, some of the questions that we needed to prepare and research for this experience to make it meaningful. And on the right, we have the focus groups, and Jack was referring to his focus group of sitting next to an individual who is incredibly courageous, who was raised by a grandfather who passed and had no one else, but made it a priority to be at school every day, made it a priority to find his voice, and was just this bright light in the room. And then across we have Professor Nadilski, my younger sister, who we collaborate with and that we've referred back and forth over the years on various projects, and she opened her classroom up to us. Next, we sort of delved into what do we do in our programs, in our schools, differently from the mainstream. And so coming in and identifying the strengths and what we bring with us to these focus groups to have conversations in a university classroom was very powerful, and it guided us. So it wasn't just examining the issue, but it was learning about one another. And that's an important part of the process. It's not just about the content. It's about bringing people together and building bridges and confidence in the process. So BAM is an alternative curriculum. New Horizons provides an opportunity for alternative curriculum. And in fact, North Park University Practicum and Sociology takes students beyond the classroom and they impact community. Anything to add, guys? Here are some of the overarching questions that we examined. So now that we know a little bit about one another's programs, what exactly do we do? What makes our settings something that works for us? Why is this alternative providing and equipping us as individuals, and why is it engaging us in the learning process? Please do.
My name is Dylan Rozak, and something different that we do in besides the mainstream classroom is that we do hands-on learning, which is very important, and also we do one-on-one learning with our well, we don't like to call it our teacher because we feel that all of us are equal. Equity is a really important thing. So, one-on-one learning is a very important thing for us. And yeah.
So with our education and the alternate education, it really gives us a chance to flourish and use hands-on skills while also learning things that are relevant to us and relevant to what the world and what the community needs. And it really just gives you, I mean, normally in school when you're learning stuff, right after you get out, you're just not really thinking about it, but stuff stays with you in New Horizons where it's things that you gotta think about now because they're what's relevant to what's going on. And it's, you know, educational in so many ways. And just walking around, you know, something may happen and you might have learned it, you know, or come up in New Horizons talking about it. And having that alternate education and that mainstream really helps all of us in school. And because we can get, in the morning we have our other classes, and in the afternoon, you know, it's just your mind. When you're never gonna have a day in New Horizons where you're just not, like, thinking really hard.
Adding on to what Jack said, I'm Devin, and adding on to what Jack said, I feel like all of us can say personally that we never walk into class wondering what we're gonna do. Like, we all basically know what our focus is, what we're most likely going to do, and we never find a day where we're bored, where we're on our phones, find a day where we're somewhat distracted.
As well as that, every day from New Horizons, it's very important because we come home and every day we have something to say to our parents.
And adding on to what we think equity, when we were at North Park, we don't use the words like them, we're working for them. We don't use those words, we're working with them, we're working together. So we create the situation equal.
And we identify what's different. Because here, several students mentioned what's different. It isn't something that a teenager is excited to share with parents what happened at school. Sometimes it's a one-word answer, but we find that we're talking about school, we're talking about our projects, we're talking about our experiences, we're talking about things that happen beyond the classroom in the news, or over the summer, or through familial time, and we bring it back into the classroom and provide that space. How do we look to others to learn? In New Horizons, it isn't just about the teacher and the content, it's about introducing young people to community leaders. It's about introducing young people to individuals who've had life experience. It's introducing young people to younger people, right, that look up to them. And so this creates an opportunity to really experience and exercise the type of values that are the foundation in New Horizons. How do we do right? How do we do justice? So it isn't just about knowing, but doing. And this is something that is a continual process. And the group goes through highs and lows and growing pains. But we reflect on the beginning of the school year and how we've been able to really grow together. And that's what stays and creates a bond with the cohort. The last piece is sort of looking forward. In New Horizons, there is no end to addressing equity. Fostering equity requires constantly tending to something, and tending to it not just for 1 year, but tending to it and building off of it. And we have an advantage in New Horizons that we have freshmen, and some of those freshmen are in New Horizons all 4 years, but that also puts a greater responsibility on us to make sure that these lessons aren't left on the side. So as we craft our focus for next year, equity becomes part of that experience. We will visit North Park University again. We will connect with those students from Julian High School again, and we will form relationships with them and share stories of our growth as we approach the next year. This particular slide is a very significant one. It's a very important one because we are expanding our circle of equity. We've been invited back to Chicago, not to the university campus, but to the Cambodian Heritage Cultural Center. And here is a community that is in the process of healing. They are in the process of seeking equity, and they do it by not closing themselves off to the world. They do it by opening their doors. We will be having discussions there with the same three stakeholders: North Park's seniors, Julian High School juniors, and New Horizons students. But we'll be doing it in a setting where we're pulling in another stakeholder. There'll be a community meal with an ethnic meal together. We will then already be comfortable because we know people around us, and we will do that at the beginning of May. May 6th, we'll travel there to experience yet another component of our project. Any questions?
I'd like to just congratulate you, and I've been, privy to these stories through hearing and learning from your teacher. And I really appreciate what you said, Dylan, that this is really a democratic classroom. You really don't have a teacher, you're all teachers, you're all equals in this process. And I had a question. how did you find New Horizons, or how did New Horizons find you? So when you came here from the middle school or whatever school you may have been at before, or when you came to the high school, how did you land at New Horizons?
Well, I felt as if the mainstream classroom wasn't right for me because not only did I not have the one-on-one experience I wanted, well, I shouldn't say I wanted, but I needed something else where I could use my time more like wisely. And hands-on learning is perfect for me. So, but hands-on learning and one-on-one experience is like the best thing for me. And I'm so happy that New Horizons found me actually. So I'm really glad to be in New Horizons right now with all these special people. They're special to me. So thank you guys.
You know, it wasn't that I was having bad grades. My grades were B's and C's and A's and just pretty average, and it was really just, I'm getting these grades right, but I don't feel anything I'm getting out of it. Like, am I gonna sit here for 4 years to go sit at college for another 4 years to get a degree I'm probably gonna spend a lot of money on and have a chance of not doing when, you know, there's so many other jobs and ways of employment that are very successful that you can find in different ways that aren't traditional. And I felt that New Horizons would lead me to that, maybe finding something earlier in life that I like, where I know I can do something, I can have experience with it, have it on my resume, and that'll help me a lot. And I really just reached out to one of my resource teachers, talked to him, then went and talked to my counselor, and just had an interview and started then.
I really hope my mom's not in this, not in here, but like,
She can watch the tape later.
yeah, I'm pretty sure she'll see this, but honestly, like, come from my background, I really like kind of BS through high school, and I'm just keeping it real. But I remember talking to Miss Norris, my counselor, and telling like I don't know if I can do this, and I was kind of afraid that I might not graduate, and I didn't want to take the easy way out. But when I heard about New Horizons, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go through this easily, you know, I'm just BS my way again. But when I first came in, like they kind of like had me like open arms and like invite me into like their family, which was like kind of cool. Like I never like had a class that just open arms and like I meet everybody. And New Horizons, like it helped me grow as a person because I really did not know what I really wanted to do after high school. But after talking to Bodon H and Miss G, I kind of know what I want to be in as my major. Sorry. I really want to be like a fashion designer, and talking to like Bodon, like he gives me like the motivation that his work ethic is like so like crazy to me. I want like match the same work ethic for I can be the best I can be. And like New Horizons has really helped me and grow as like a family on me. Like I really like thank New Horizons all and everybody in this classroom, like my class, like Dylan, Jaden, Jack, Devin, there you go, and Gavin. But yeah, I'm really thankful for New Horizons though, for helping me.
So I knew that I really liked being outside and working hands-on, and I really wasn't learning that much for freshman year, and I thought I needed something else. So I talked to my counselor, and she told me about New Horizons, and I said, okay, let's give this a shot, and I feel like I've been welcomed, and I've welcomed the other people in, and it's just a growing community in New Horizons. We all look up to each other, we all add on to what we're talking about. I feel like we work as one whole person, and the team. Even though we might have different views on something, we all agree on one thing.
My name is Jaden, and I
I am very grateful that New Horizons found me and I found it, but I did not work well in the traditional classroom. It was something that I was failing at, and I needed another option. And Dr. A introduced me to Bodon, and I really had a strong connection with him because we both like soccer. That was the first thing, but the connection goes on, and like I take these guys as like family. Like if I ever need anything, I know who to go to, and that's like a bond that I would never want to break, and it's something I'm very grateful to have.
I can actually basically relate to Jaden, just besides soccer. I was failing a lot in school, and I would not pass high school if I wasn't in New Horizons right now. I like to skip school and everything and just slack off, and I started shadowing for New Horizons one day, and then just decided to just keep coming back until I was in it. I basically put myself in there without any approval. So I was still skipping class when I was doing that. And I was in Miss Glenman's group, and wasn't my type of thing. Just I liked the stuff that they did, but I liked being outdoors more, so I went into Bodon's group, and ever since then my attendance has been almost okay. And I am now 2 credits away from graduating as of the end of last semester. I wouldn't be able to graduate if it wasn't for New Horizons.
You just wait. New Horizons found me when back in 2005 in the summer, and Bodon was drafted up New Horizons, and he was my study hall teacher. I walked in, and Bodon make everything sound great, and I was like, man, that sounds like a great program. So he it was going into my senior year, and him and Mr. Kenny came to my house, and they asked me to sign up. I was like, am I the first kid? And they was like, yeah. Like, come on, let's do it, all right? And just the experience that I never experienced ever in my life. Like, from the beginning, the first day, but I kind of ordered our furniture late, so we didn't have any furniture in the class. I remember being a senior, and like, back then we used to do the running of the seniors in the hall and banging. You remember Mr. So he was banging on the hall. Yeah, I came back to the classroom tired, and it was just an empty class. My friends was like, "This your class?" I was like, yeah. But after that, I mean, we got our furniture, and Bodon introduced me to the Urban Ecology Center, which we still have that partnership today, and go every Tuesday today, almost 12 years ago. And it helped me so much. It helped me actually become the person I am today, because I did not realize that I had the power to talk to younger people, and they would listen. So what Bodon ended up doing with the Urban Ecology Center would teach us about the microvertebrates in the river, and we had to teach that lesson plan back to the younger children at Atwater and Lake Bluff. And I was only a senior then, and when you walk into a classroom full of first and second graders, and it's intimidating, and they can smell fear. I was like, oh my God. So it taught me how to really approach a situation with younger children. And 10 years later, I was teaching. I had an opportunity for Mr. Joint and Mr. Harris, and they gave me this opportunity. I still remember walking in New Horizons and feeling like, wow, it still feel like a family. It still feel like Bodon kept the tradition going with when students walk in, we want them to feel welcome. You know how the first day of school is. Everybody nervous, everybody scared. It's like, now if we have a senior we have a student that been there for 4 years, 3 years, they know how to welcome the other students. They introduce each other, they talk about each other's backgrounds, they really get to know each other. And that's why I think we build the bond that we build. And yeah, and from there, then on out, I think I've been a huge advocate for students around the Shorewood as far as if you need help, let us know, because if the regular classroom not working, we have an alternative learning program that will help you. We will not give up on you, and we will be going to get through this together. And I tell them we're going to get through this together, or I'm going to drag you by your collar to the graduation line. So, and it's been like that ever since. So thank you guys for listening.
And one more thing to that, I wouldn't be the person who I am without H. So I mean, he's dragged me through the dirt, and
In a good way, guys.
if I get in trouble, he's the one that calms me down, so I don't get in more trouble than I am. So I mean, he's probably the one that's helped me in like my hardest times. So I wouldn't be the person I am without him.
I love you guys.
Okay, so when I joined New Horizons for the first time, which I'm a freshman, so it's my first year joining. And I'm the newest kid, so when I first joined, I was very, very scared and nervous because I didn't know anybody. But then when I walked in the classroom, everybody welcomed me. I had friends right away. I'm so happy that I got accepted to New Horizons, and I have like this huge group of people just supporting me all the way. Like Bodon, Mr. H, everybody. Just thank you guys.
Dylan was the one who came back from spring break and like told Bodon 4th hour. And Bodon told us this story. Dylan came in 4th hour and he's like, I'm so happy to be back. I'm so glad to be here with all my friends. And yeah.
And going back to like how we found New Horizons, like I've noticed that like I've heard more people saying that they've been struggling in school within my friends or whoever, and it's just like almost as like who do you think can help work with. It's just like the recruiting process too. It's like you want to talk to your friends about it and have, we just try and gather out people because like you want to create a group that's like collaborative, but they can work together, and that's part of like the process. It's different than another class. It's like, oh, you should switch that class. Like this isn't just like just a class. You spend a lot of time doing stuff. So if you're going to be doing something for so long, you might as well be doing it with people you want to do it with and who you can work with.
Well, thank you for coming to all of you. I just wanted to say that I think everybody deserves an education that works for them, and maybe what's most impressive to me is that there's somebody here who's made it their life's work to make sure everybody gets what you had. And you've done a great service by creating another teacher, so thank you so much.
I really liked how you guys said us, not them. I think if more of us think about things as us, not them, we'd have maybe fewer problems. You guys are one of my favorite presentations from the film, so thank you. I'm just curious because we have a great crowd tonight to hear you guys. But I think that the story of what you guys do isn't shared as widely in the community as it should be. So I'm wondering, will you guys be presenting at the Authentic Learning Showcase?
Yes.
You will?
Oh, good.
Awesome. Good.
We
So
will.
we'll do a better job of getting people there to hear about all of those. That's great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Okay, up next is our first of 3 opportunities for public comments. Just wanted to say a couple of things about this. Happy to see so many people here and excited to hear from you. Just a couple of kind of notes about public comments. We ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. And we can't talk about specific personnel or employees in this space, so if you have specific concerns you want to share with us, you can do so, but just not in a public meeting. And if you ask us a question, you want to discuss something that's not agenda, we can't also discuss that, but we'd be happy to follow up with you. So I'll kind of say that at the end. But when you do come up, please state your name and address and speak into the mic.
Can we go in order of how we sign up?
Yes. Oh, did people sign up? Yeah, that would be great. Beta, do you want to grab that list? And if you'd like to sign up, you still can.
Amy Miller, 4458 North Larkin, but really 1600 East Lake Bluff. I'm a 5th and 6th grade teacher at Lake Bluff and the Shorewood Education Association president. Good evening, school board members and members of the community. I'm here tonight to congratulate you on the successful passage of the referendum. It is wonderful to be in a community that supports and cares about its schools. We look forward to sharing our expertise and experience about our students and the spaces we occupy with them to further this process. I'm also here to share with you the response and concerns teachers have raised with us over the past 2 weeks around the alleged incident at SIS. Members are in shock at the allegations and want to make sure that the investigation and decisions are being handled carefully, thoroughly, and fairly. As professional educators, we are committed to providing a broad education to all students with no exceptions, exclusions, or disparities in safe, welcoming, and inclusive environments. Our work is difficult and important. We play a pivotal role in furthering discussion and action against racism and historical barriers to equality. This work is messy, and there is no playbook. When we oversee and engage in conversations or content around sensitive topics, we place students and ourselves in vulnerable situations. To do so requires support, safety, trust, and the opportunity to learn from our experiences. The allegations against our colleague and the response to them have shaken that trust. This is now a more difficult environment to do the work we know is valuable and that our students and families need and expect us to do. How the district resolves the situation will impact how our work continues. It is crucial that we understand the decision and the process used to reach it. Staff need to know that they are safe taking risks with difficult work. The questions teachers have posed to us about how we deal with challenging topics and conversations going forward will require answers. Our administration needs to have conversations with us so together we can meet the needs of our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if people do want to sign up, you can come up here. If you have not signed up yet, there's a sign up sheet. To my left.
Hi, Roxanne Tibbetts, 4606 North Larkin, and Atwater teacher and ELO coordinator for the Shorewood School District. Members of the school board, we stand here, well, sit here and stand here as members of Atwater's leadership team and mentor teacher team because we care about our school and our students. They are the reason we engage in equity work. We are committed to bettering ourselves in order to provide more equitable experiences and outcomes for our students.
At the last board meeting, negative comments were made about the climate and the culture at Atwater. We are encouraged by the dedication and the collaboration we see amongst our staff on a daily basis. We know we have made progress. We also recognize that equity work is ongoing. We are here tonight to share with you some of the ways we are engaging in this critical work. With an awareness for the impact personal biases and beliefs have on our teaching, staff members have become more intentional in examining the practices in place in our classrooms and our school. Some aspects of this work have been more overt, like the action research in the partnership with UW-Madison, and others have been less public, like personally reflecting upon the patterns of which students get called on in class or seeking out more inclusive stories. Excuse me. For our classroom libraries. Staff members have participated in book and podcast studies, joined community conversations through race, through the YWCA, examined research-based best practices for providing teacher feedback to African American students, to name just a few. Above all, Atwater staff strives to build strong, meaningful relationships with all of our students and all of our families to increase the feeling of connectedness and belonging within our community. As we have engaged in this work, we have learned that a variety of approaches and solutions are necessary. There may be missteps despite our very best intentions, but combating inequity is the work of public education. This work requires us to be vulnerable and to rely on professional and moral support from our administrators, our colleagues, our community. We will continue to learn new best practices from experts. We will continue to dialogue about how biases impact our teaching and our ideas. We will continue to reach out to our families, our students, to empathize with their experiences and their needs, and to engage in developing student-centered solutions to the equity challenges faced by Atwater Elementary. There is no other option to strive to attain equity, growth, and excellence for all. We owe this to our students. Atwater leadership team and mentors. Thank you.
Thanks. Tia?
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Tia Medley. I'm here today as a representative of Shorewood Moving Forward. We are a community action group that is helping to create a more inclusive community for people of color in Shorewood. Shorewood Moving Forward has two statements today. The first is to express support for the role of Director of Equity position here in Shorewood. Thank you so much for building this important position. Secondly, we come to you this evening to acknowledge the public statement made by Steve Coopery, Wisconsin Educational Association Council, or WEAC's Director of Region 7, of which the Shorewood Teachers Association belongs to. To date, there has been no public statement refuting the comments made by WEAC, and therefore we assume that SEA supports the WEAC statement as well. Shorewood Moving Forward will have a response to the union's public statement with the goal of advocating for equality of educational opportunities for all of our racial and ethnic minorities and within Shorewood. We also hope to better understand the SEA's commitment and role in this essential educational responsibility. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Dr. Stevens.
Good evening, Dr. Stevens, 3909 North Murray Avenue. First, I just want to say I'm so excited that the teachers are here to be a part of the conversation that we've been having about as it relates to equity. And unfortunately, there have been experiences that myself and my children have experienced it, and it's not hearsay, it's firsthand personal experience. And be it that it's very important that we do work together collaboratively. And the first thing that I'm always emphasizing is the mind. Do we have, as a community, fixed mindsets or growth mindsets? And then are we, as individuals, reflective about our purpose or our intention? So intent is one thing, but the impact that you leave on a child is a lifetime. And so part of being an educator, because I have been an educator for the past 20 years, is to be a reflective practitioner. It's important that if there's a misstep or whatever the case may be, when you're in front of children, it's okay. That's part of we are crew. If you can't make a mistake, you can't make anything, right? And so part of the I am in support with Shorewood moving forward in terms of having an equity position to be able to bring to light on a platform, not just for minority students, but other students as well, special needs students as well, as it relates to equity. And it's always difficult to come into a space where you're just one of many, or just a few. So to be a person of color and you're functioning in white spaces, it's difficult because there's so many different dynamics. And so one of the things that I hope with the equity director, that this person will not just be seen as the person that troubleshoots anything dealing with African Americans, right? But it's a person that is valued by teachers, by administrators, and by the community, and so that the person is able to work through the difficult situations as they arise, and not only just to say we want to deal with them so we can move forward, but to actually acknowledge hurt, develop a plan to implement it, so that students, teachers, families can be restored, and then we can create an action plan to move forward. Be it that there's additional professional development, be it that we have teachers available and present during your science fairs to get to know families, because we do have great families turnouts, right? And it's important to be able to connect with people. And I'm just so ecstatic about New Horizon, because those young men demonstrated exactly as to what parents want to see in our community and what community stakeholders want to see. They want to see not a us and them, but students and teachers being able to work collaboratively and actually genuinely caring enough to listen, to be reflective, and then to make sure that the practices in the classroom reflect the dynamics in the community and as in the world. Because at the end of the day, we want to create 21st century thinkers, and we want to create leaders and agents of change. And we can only do that when we're willing to be growth mindset and we're willing to be reflective. Thank you.
Thank you.
T.W. Prescott.
Good evening. My name is T.W. Prescott. Address is 2908 North 5th Street. I have a senior at Shorewood High School, B.J. Prescott. He's here this evening. I'd like to start out by saying, as a parent who's had a child in the Shorewood School District since K-5, I've always been a parent who's always participated. I've always volunteered. When he was over at Atwater, volunteered for lots of field trips because I felt an obligation that some of the students of color deserved to see a volunteer in the building that looked like them. There weren't any teachers in the building that looked like my son or me. There were no teachers of color there. No offense to the Atwater leadership team that just spoke, there were no teachers of color with that group either. I emailed Principal Kinney. I know him very well. As far as equity goes, I attended a field trip when my son was in elementary school, and we were going to the art museum, and I watched a female white teacher ask 3 questions, call on 3 little white girls that looked just like her. She didn't call on a single boy, neither did she call on a student of color. And I emailed Principal Kinney about that. I had an issue with that. And Principal Kinney knows me very well because he traveled to the middle school, and at 8th grade graduation, we as parents sat in the audience while 3 white kids conducted the entire graduation exercise. And to me, that said to me that it's okay for the kids to want to volunteer to orchestrate the graduation, but not a single adult looked at that and thought, maybe we should include at least 1 student of color. So that to me fell on a lack of thought from the school. Nobody thought there was an issue with that. I haven't been back to another graduation because all I have is 1 child. So I have no idea how graduation is being conducted in 8th grade, but I did email Principal Kinney about that as well. And coming here this evening, I appreciated hearing the young men from New Horizons talk about us and not them. And as a parent of a student of color, that has been quite prevalent. It has always been just them, the students of color. It's always been just them. I have yet to see them engage. I have yet to see, and my son's a senior, and I think that's unfortunate that he has gone from elementary to middle school to high school still feeling as though he hasn't been engaged, that nobody has even thought that they should be engaging students of color in what's going on until they got YRU started and gave them a voice. There was no thought. And Atwater, I appreciated Ms. Tibbetts saying who gets called on is important. That was one of the stories that I told, who gets called on. And to me, you get that visual recognition. I tell people all the time, you hear stories and about a lack of diversity. I, as an adult black woman in this country, know that I will never get the visual nod when it comes to white people. And by that I mean, if you see me walking, all you see is my blackness. But if you see another person that looks like you, they may remind you of your Aunt Betty, or your Uncle Jim, or your nephew Tom. But me being black, I don't remind you of anybody because all you see is my blackness. And that was what I got from the teacher calling on the 3 little white girls that looked like her. So I started coming to the meetings with the play, and a young lady stood up and she said, it's not your intent, it's the impact that you leave on the students. And to think that nobody is trying to make a positive impact on the students of color as they go from elementary to middle to high school is not only unfortunate, but it's just a downright injustice. And so I just came to speak. I've never spoken at one of the school board meetings. I've come, but I've never spoken. And I just thought this would be a perfect opportunity to speak on that and hope that the board really considers that with the new position, that you not only address the students, but you also address all students. And as Dr. Stevens said, students with disabilities as well. I come from DVR, the Division of Voc Rehab with the state. And so people with disabilities, that is a real passion of mine. And so it's very important to engage all students, not just the able ones and not just the ones that look like you, but all students. And I'm hoping that the board takes that very seriously. I don't know what the elementary makeup is with the students. Like I said, the Atwater leadership team just came up here and there wasn't a teacher of color. So I have no idea what that ratio looks like at Atwater or Lake Bluff or SIS now. I was pleased to see that Atwater is getting a black female principal, so there will be at least somebody in the building that looks like the other kids, but I hope that the board would take it upon themselves and HR to at least try to go out and get teachers of color so that the kids can see someone that looks like them, and that if an issue arises, that the first instinct isn't to get rid of the troublemaker. If a teacher has something to say that they recognize as an issue, it shouldn't be that you have to go because you voice an opinion about that issue. I think that the board and that individual deserves at least a listen to see where their criticism is coming from. And it shouldn't be viewed as an issue, it should be viewed as an addition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Michael Pope.
I am Michael Poe, 2031 East Marion Street. Today, I actually decided to come to the board meeting and be a voice for my daughter. I'm heartbroken, and today I'm going to, in turn, give her interpretation of her 4 years at Atwater. Hi, I'm Celine. I entered Atwater at the 2nd grade. When I first got to Atwater, I was very happy to be in a beautiful atmosphere, a beautiful school. But shortly afterwards, things changed. I came from a Maryland Montessori background, and I was used to a certain structure. But initially, I thought that this school may be the same. So, until I realized that I was going to the office every day. Every day I was in the office. I was probably more in the office than I was in my classroom. That led up to my peers looking at me differently. I hear this thing that they speak about, and it's called IEP. I think I'm a part of that program, but I really don't know. I wonder what that's about. I take my first year, going into the 3rd grade. My mom and dad is thinking about holding me back because I had a rough year last year. So I enter the 3rd grade, and because of the stigma that the school has put on my back, because of the many times I've been to the office, my peers are now teasing me. I know I look different, but I have a good heart. I'm starting to feel something different in the atmosphere. Kids are calling me nigger. I feel like my education is slipping. I'm in trouble for everything that I do. But it goes on. I go into my 4th grade year. God, I don't know how I made it out of 2nd and 3rd grade. 4th grade year, I'm starting to be a little depressed. I'm different. I know I'm different. I understand what IEP means now. The teachers are isolating or secluding me from a classroom. They remove everyone and leave me there by myself. I'm not violent. I'm really depressed. I feel like killing myself. I make a video. I sent it to my peers. I could have died that day. No one supports me. No one loves me. I'm in the 5th grade now. I feel a little more confident. I'm trying to get past these things, this depression. I'm seeing a psychotherapist though, every Friday. My family's been called CPS on for absolutely nothing. These are some of the stories that my daughter had to go through Atwater. Initially, I came in as a father very, very optimistic and very hopeful of the school system here. And the last 4 years is starting to be a little bit more than what I thought it was going to be. There's the seclusion. I know she's an IEP, but the seclusion is twice, maybe once or twice. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. She's not violent. This is a good kid. She swims for the swim club. We stick money into Shorewood. We support the Shorewood. My son goes to the school, to the high school. He graduates this year. It's just, I'm majorly concerned because we speak of equity within the future, but what about now? What about now? What about the kids that are struggling, that are indifferent, that are challenged? The teachers shouldn't make them feel any other way. The peers should make them feel the other way. I just wanted to say, for her, this is just the beginning of her story. And I would like to see some things happen. Someone reach out to me, and I do appreciate the ones that have reached out to me. But I would like to really think that you guys would take this a lot more serious. This kid, my daughter almost lost her life. Lost her life. She was contemplating killing herself. That is so deep. That is so deep. I mean, I'm sure that you guys got kids. No one wants that for their kids. That moves me. It should move you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last person? Okay. Thank you. There's, I guess, mentioned 2 other opportunities for public comments as well. Okay. We're gonna talk about the 2019-2020 budget.
All right, so I'll have Patrick Miller and Tim Joint can join him up at the table to talk through the a budget update that we have at this point in the year. So I'll have Patrick. The materials are posted, and so Patrick.
Thank you.
Take it away.
You have the executive summary and the impact statement packet that goes along with this. I do want to just turn back to the executive summary and go through some portions of that as my summary of this information. Impact statements are developed by the administration for the purpose of developing the fiscal 2020 budget. We require the recommendations from the administrators to make sure that we're developing our operational expectation, our results alignment, that we have programmatic impact and implementation plans in these documents, that we are looking at the fiscal impact both immediately and ongoing, and that we have a process for annual evaluation of these programs. The statements that you have in front of you are brought to the executive the administrative team, which consists of the principals and the directors in the district, so that they can essentially make recommendations for programmatic or personnel enhancements that they feel are going to provide value to their school, to their programs in their school for the upcoming year. The way we look at these impact statements is we have typically every year there's some amount of new money that will be coming to the school district from the state, some be it increases in categorical aid or revenue limit. And we look at those dollars that are available to us. We add to that any cost savings that we will have through attrition, like retirement, or teachers that are leaving the district for one reason or another, for potentially FTE changes. For example, if we have a teacher that's at a 0.6 FTE and that their class is being reduced, so their class sections are being reduced, and they'll drop down to a 0.5 FTE. There's a lot of different ways that we can get to those cost savings. We factor into that what we're going to estimate for our salary increases across the board for all employee groups, health insurance increases, dental insurance increases, essentially all of the fixed costs that we have. And then we come up with a dollar amount of what we feel we have to invest in new programming, new or alternative positions, or towards these impact statements. The other way that we can address these impact statements is by choosing to cover those financial impacts within our existing budget. So if we haven't had an administrator come up and say, and typically the school sites are not going to do this, they have a per pupil amount that is that's allocated to their school, and they have the flexibility to do with that allocation what they feel is best suited for their building. But for example, Mr. Joint, typically I don't take dollars away from him in his budget unless he has one year a large curriculum purchase, in which case there will be a 1 year where we allocate more money to him so that he can make that curriculum purchase, and then we reduce that from year to year. So if there is a program and there are some impact statements in this packet that we as a administrative group said we can't put, we're not going to put any new funding toward them, but we're going to instruct the director over that particular department to find a way to fund that inside of their existing budget. Once these impact statements are presented, the administration council, we got together everybody in the room with all of the impact statements, and we gave every administrator the ability to talk toward the impact statements that they submitted. This also was an opportunity for other administrators to ask questions about that particular impact statement. And the intent of these impact statements is to have the administrators to feel comfortable enough in having the discussions with their colleagues about these different recommendations. It sometimes is very difficult to go into these meetings as an administrator knowing that you're going to be recommending purchases or recommending personnel or recommending programmatic changes that are going to directly pit themselves against another administrator. And so, I admire the administrative team for getting together and having these discussions with each other because it is difficult. You know that there are no winners and losers in this because we're all approaching this as what's best for kids. But at the end of the day, when you have a recommendation that doesn't make it and someone else has a recommendation that does, we're human beings. And so, these are difficult conversations to have. And I admire the administrative team for having those. At the end of this process, when everybody had a chance to discuss their impact statements, we went through a ranking process. And the way we did it very simply was to put out a a Google form that allowed them to rank each impact statement on a scale of 1 to 5. And, you know, that Google form was not sent out to them beforehand. I sent out the Google form when the discussion was done. Nobody was filling out their forms and ranking things while the discussions were happening. Everybody was engaged. But what it did allow us to do is have that immediate ranking feedback in that meeting, and then we could post the rankings and, you know, again, have some further discussion with that. Once that ranking was done, we concluded that meeting. Essentially, the rankings go to the executive cabinet, which is essentially Dr. Davis and the directors, Mickey Chavans, Tim Joint, Jody Brooks, Ted Knight, myself, and Arthur Anderson. And we go through the process of looking at this ranking and measuring the fiscal impact of that ranking against what we anticipate as the dollars that we're going to have, the additional dollars that we're going to have to invest in programming for the district. And you know, we continue the discussions and essentially put together from that ranking what we feel are the best positions to bring forward, or the best impact statements to bring forward within a reasonable budgetary expectation. And so what you have in your packet, first of all, is our executive summary, and then you've got the executive cabinet ranking of the impact statements that, and you know, I'm going to use the terminology that I use, the things that are above the line. So those are the impact statements that we feel are important enough to move forward and that reasonably fit into our budget bucket that we are anticipating for 1920. And the last thing that you have are essentially all of the impact statements. I'll be honest, the concern that I have with bringing all of the impact statements instead of the impact statements that are approved is we are encouraging our administrative team to bring everything that they are thinking of to the table. And it's taken some time for our administrative team to be comfortable with one another and to bring things, even though they may feel that it's not going to be able to measure up with the other requests that are being made, especially given the budget assumptions that we're working with. But you know, we want our administrative team to be able to have those discussions and get things on the table and talk with one another as professionals. And you know, my fear is that if we're not able to have these discussions amongst ourselves, that it's going to squelch that discussion and they're only going to bring the impact statements that they think are going to pass. And I don't think that's healthy for our process. As you go through and look at the executive summary, I did mention that there are a couple of items that will still be able to be included in the budget, but they'll need to be funding within the existing budget allocations rather than through additional funding. What I mean by additional or existing budget allocations is, for example, one of those is summer work for passages. That particular item, its impact statement number 14, falls under the umbrella of curriculum and instruction. And so what we feel that's important, but we also feel that Mr. Joint should be able to find within his budget the dollars to be able to do what that impact statement is asking to do.
Pat, if I could just jump in before we go through these different impact statements. First of all, thank you to you and the whole executive board and all the administrative folks that were part of this process. My question is to the process. How does the process account for parity between schools to ensure, you know, year after year are the same administrators kind of winning the same requests, or how are you all account, or how does the process account to ensure that, let's say, things don't become too lopsided, that, you know, Lake Bluff doesn't, or whatever school system they
Right,
want.
and that's a really good question, and, you know, again, as this is only really our second year of using the impact statements, as the district continues to use this process, that's something that we are going to have to pay attention to longitudinally. That being said, when we have these discussions with the impact statements, we're really looking at it as a district, and we're looking for what areas are going to have the greatest impact. We're not looking for, okay, we've got roughly $180,000, let's divide that into 4 campuses and everybody gets their share. We're really looking at what's going to have the ability to move the needle the most in the district as a whole.
Could you share just for context for the public and anybody who's curious, that now that the referendum questions have passed, when will that money be reflected in our budget, just to help folks understand, you know, there's not an instant $65 million windfall, et cetera?
Well, correct, and I would not necessarily classify it as a $65 million windfall. I think that's
right.
a bit cavalier in classification, but what will happen this next year is the $275,000 revenue limit question will be levied for, and what your new business manager will be doing is recommending that to the board that $275,000 be levied into Fund 41 instead of it being put into the general fund. There are certain ways under the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting requirements, there are certain ways that certain funds in school funding get their money. And while it seems like it's, you know, we're just picking random amounts and moving them from fund to fund, it's actually the way those funds are, money is put into those funds. For example, if we were putting money into Fund 46, which is also a capital improvement fund, but it has different requirements, those dollars would have to be transferred from Fund 10 into Fund 46. Whereas Fund 41, there actually has to be, the board has to vote to levy those dollars into it. So, you know, that's where it's the board's responsibility, after passing the referendum for $275,000 for the purpose of maintenance, that every year you're responsible for approving my recommendation or the business manager's recommendation to levy those dollars into that fund.
So in August, when we approve the tax levy, then the next, so that it wouldn't really affect tax bills until the tax bill is due, like January 2020,
Correct.
right?
Those will all be on the upcoming tax bill.
Thanks.
And as far as the $65 million goes, again, I'm working with PMA Financial, and what our plan is, as far as the first draw for the capital portion of the referendum, is we need to get through, the district needs to get through the September, October sort of
Count.
big landing, you know, big questions that have to be answered, student count, the equalized value and state aid. And at that point in time, we will be able to establish our levy that is at the amount that was approved through the referendum, the 1418, or I think it was, or 1419. And that will let us know how much we can take in the first draw of that. Those dollars do not go into the general fund. They go into a segregated fund that is a fund called Fund 49. It's there for those capital improvements that are funded through a referendum question, and that's where those dollars stay until they're used to pay for projects that are being funded by the referendum.
Thanks. So can I, sorry, were you done with your overview?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I had a question about, I think we kind of started this question about EL last time, and maybe Tim, you can answer this. Like, so credentialing. I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out what the, I mean, do we need to be credentialed? Like, is that like the plan given some sort of evaluation of where EL is going? And what does that mean for us?
That's a really great question. And so what we did last year was we brought in kind of a quote-unquote credentialing specialist from EL to talk to our leadership teams about what that process looks like. Ultimately, EL does, and we agreed that at some point in time, if you are an EL school, you need to be credentialed. Otherwise, you're not an EL school. And what EL would say is then we should probably sever that partnership, because if we're not going to work together, then let's just call it that and sever that partnership. What that actually looks like is really interesting, because it is not like any other program that I've worked with. Is really what EL is looking for schools to do is to tell their own story. So they actually ask the schools to set 3 goals around academic mastery, character, and high quality work. And some of those are a little bit prescribed for schools. So in other words, when it comes to academic mastery, one of the goals that you have to have is that you're working on closing academic gaps, and you show the data to prove that you're closing academic gaps. That aligns with our district vision as well. But ultimately, when you get down a few, EL schools have the ability to say, and here's another goal that we felt as Atwater or Lake Bluff was really important, and here's how we met that goal. So really what EL does during the credentialing year is they ask you to collect some evidence that shows that you've met your goals. They come in, you tell your story, and they actually want community involvement in that process as well, because what they want that credentialing experience to seem more like is a celebration of where you've gotten to as a school and a community, rather than as checks and boxes. And so it's an interesting process that I've not seen in past programs that I've worked with. It's very much been, you need to put checks in all these boxes in order to get to a credentialing standpoint, as EL would call it.
So, I mean, but I guess my question is about, like, we can continue to be a school that practices EL without being credentialed EL school, correct?
Ultimately,
or maybe we have to call it something else. But, I mean, I guess
correct.
I'm just trying to figure out, it's interesting, right? Because I was at the table when we decided to, bring EL on board, and people felt really, really strongly about it. And now it has become something that we do, but like it's not necessarily part of our identity in the way that they thought it. I mean, and that's my perspective at least, being in the spaces. The tenets of EL around mastery, around character, yes, definitely part of our school system. But the language EL, I don't think necessarily is. And I'm just trying to get your perspective in your conversations with teachers and administrators at the elementary schools, like what that looks like given the cost involved.
Yep, and I think that's actually, for me, your comment is actually what I actually like about our EL partnership, is that they don't overpower the conversation, and they don't want to overpower the conversation. They want Lake Bluff to be Lake Bluff. They want Atwater to be Atwater, and then to support with professional development, with Penny who comes in to help, with various resources to help us get to those points, rather than saying, here's the points that you need to get to. So to that point, that's kind of where they want us to be, is to not be saying, well, why aren't you saying that you're in more of an EL school, rather you're Atwater and you use Lake Bluff resources. So that's really important that that line is drawn, is that our Lake Bluff's identity is still Lake Bluff, Atwater's identity is still Atwater. We utilize EL as a resource to get to those goals that we have in mind as a district and as a school.
Okay. Well,
To that end, though, we would not have one school credentialed and one not, right? So if all of a sudden, like, Bluff's identity is that we don't really want to be an EL credentialed school, we're not saying as a district, that's okay. We're saying we have two EL schools who have done this process, who, assuming we are credentialed, am I correct?
Correct. We've talked about credentialing at both schools. And I have said that we're both going to credential as we've put in a lot of time and resources into it. So yes, that may happen at different rates. And I've said that that has been okay, but ultimately, yes, I have said to both schools that we would credential.
Oh, like one school would catch up, like get there before the other?
It's possible.
They're different credentialing evaluations, so they're not moving through the process like as a pair. There's an evaluation at Atwater and there's an evaluation at Lake Bluff, so they've got their implementation reviews and that type of thing.
So as they set their individual school goals, one
Correct.
could be met quicker.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess then, so this is the path. So in your conversations with teachers and administrators at the school, this is, they want to be credentialed. Like they want to see us get to that stage?
I think at one of our schools, we're still having some conversations around it, to be honest with you. And I think at Atwater, I think we're looking more towards that credentialing. And Lake Bluff, we're still having some conversations around it. But ultimately, I think we're working as a leadership team to Roel from EL and I are going to be presenting at Lake Bluff tomorrow to talk about how EL plays a supporting role. I think there's been a little bit of a perception of EL's taking the lead and Lake Bluff identity is kind of getting lost, and we're trying to redefine that Lake Bluff is really important to stay Lake Bluff and that EL needs to support Lake Bluff as opposed to EL leading Lake Bluff.
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm still, trying to figure out like where, again, given 5 years ago, I feel like there's just kind of a shift in how people, I mean, this is my perception of like how people talk about it even, and it could just be that people are used to it now, and there was a lot of excitement around it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and like, felt like we had to do it essentially, right? There was no other option. And so I just am trying to get at like, if that, and again, because we do so much of it, I don't know how much of the title matters, particularly to the teachers and to the administrators. And it's, not a small amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
given our limited budget. So I just want it to be clear, like this is something that we feel very strongly we need to do, that we need to get credentialed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think as you look at the impact statement, you don't see a ton of information behind it. But as we look at, quite honestly, so if we look at our academic mastery, we only have 2 points, so it doesn't create a great trend line. So if we go back to our school report cards, we've only seen growth since the implementation of EL, other than Lake Bluff taking a 1/10 of a point decline from last year to this year. But both schools have made gains since the implementation of EL.
Okay. I mean, that causal relationship, I think, is a little, I think, when did you start?
3 years ago.
I mean, so there's lots of things that have happened in those years. So, I mean, that's fine. I just want to, like I said, I just want to understand, like, being an EL school with that, if we're like, yes, that's part of our identity now. Because, again, that was part of when they came to do their kind of selling,
Mm-hmm.
the program, it was like, these are all the EL schools around the country, and, you'd be part of this network. And so I just wanted to confirm that that's still something that we're looking at. Sorry, Emily.
Oh, that's okay, sorry. Yeah, I mean, my concern is not so much the cost of the credentialing, it's the, thinking through the cost of the instructional time and the time that kids are spending doing EL stuff, like the crew meetings. I guess my question is, how much flexibility we have if we're credentialed or pursuing credentialing, to do things in our school's unique way. Like, can we make the decision, okay, this thing that we're doing as part of EL is taking away from another value that we have, and therefore we're gonna stop doing it? Will we risk then losing our credentialing and sort of, in essence, wasting work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to answer that in a not great way in terms of a non-answer, like it depends, right? So if we aren't going to do expeditions or crew, those are two really big tenets of EL. And so to say we're no longer going to do crew or we're no longer going to do expeditions, I think are pretty big pieces. But for us to say, you know what, we're not gonna do panels that show the process of students learning out in our hallways. That might be something that we can say, you know what, that just doesn't meet the needs of our school, so we're not going to do that. And so that would be something that would be a definition of us. But there are some big pieces of EL that like we couldn't let go of. And
Right.
part of those are, yes, we're going to daily talk about crew, just like we used to do morning meetings. So that's kind of a replacement of that. And yes, we're going to do expeditions. So there's some bigger pieces that I would say, yeah, we can't really let go of those. Otherwise, I mean, really, we're not doing some of the EL practices. And then there's some smaller ones that are absolutely negotiable.
When you talked about in the impact statement that the EL has allowed us to move the needle on authentic learning, can you talk about what that means, like quantitatively, like what kind of things signal to you success and in terms of like EL delivering our value of authentic learning?
Yeah, and I think I would go back to one, kind of the increases in report cards, which there's some other causes in there, as well as I would say as you look at our showcase, many of those tables are going to be our elementary schools who are doing expeditions. I would say you could probably look at our implementation review scores as we go throughout in terms of how are we doing with implementing EL, and noticing that those are slowly increasing at both schools each year. As a matter of fact, usually we're ahead by a year at both schools. So I think there's a number of things that would point to we're implementing well and continuing to implement well. I think as we get invited to more and more showcases of learning at our grade levels, that I know many teachers invite our school board to as well. I think that's another great quantitative number of how are we getting to that authentic learning. So those would be kind of just off the cuff what I would probably point to.
I think another example for me was listening to students' passages last year, the sixth grade passages, and the examples of impacts when students were asked about their learning experiences, what were memorable for them. Many of them had gone back to their experience that they had done through their expedition process. So to me, that was also a clear indication of progress that we've made.
I have a question about a different impact statement. Yeah. Okay. So, and this is actually for you, Brian. So I noticed Ms. Patterson put in two, essentially both a Spanish teacher and then I guess a technology teacher. And these, I'm guessing, were to address something that we've heard at the SEA linkages around parity in terms of, I already forget what it's called.
Prep time.
Prep time, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw, and so neither of these were we didn't have the funding for these, so I wanted to know, like, what other things have you and the SEA discussed about the prep time concern that came up?
We haven't. We haven't at this point. So this was just going through our budget process and the prioritization as we looked at it. So that's something that we weren't able to address it through these impact statements, so we'll have to continue to talk to them about that. So we didn't have a solution through here. But what we had looked at, again, through, and again, as Patrick had mentioned before, this was somewhat of a brainstorm of what are the possibilities. And so just thinking through different options. The one thing that came across, and again, when we're looking at prep time, one thing that came across strongly when looking at our staffing patterns this year was the third grade position, or third grade status at Atwater with the class sizes. And so part of the conversation was around additional staff, and as we would look at staff, adding staff, do we want to do it through a technology position, through a Spanish position, or being able to look at adding that staff member. And so the way that our conversations evolved, we thought that adding the staff member and being able to get class sizes from, I think they were going to be around 24 to about 18, I think next year, was what we're deciding to do as far as the direction is concerned. Again, I think on an annual basis, so we'll have to continue the conversations about the prep time issue. Again, part of this process, though, for us too, is being able to archive the impact statements that are done on an annual basis and then be able to bring them back and kind of rehash those. So I would expect this to be an ongoing conversation that we would have, along with additional impact statements that we would develop on an annual basis, but it's not necessarily anything that's going away. It just didn't, from a prioritization standpoint, didn't make it for this year.
So just to piggyback, I'm sorry, just to piggyback off what Dr. Davis just said, what I will be doing is taking all of the impact statements that were not approved for funding in the 19-20 budget, and I'll already be creating the folder for the 2021 budget, and I'll be moving all of those impact statements into that file. So we will be starting the fiscal year 21 process with all of these impact statements put into them, and then the administrator will be able to either remove that impact statement because they don't feel that it's necessary, or that they feel like it's going to be that impactful before we begin this process again next year.
Or if I could add, they could perhaps revise and
Correct.
strengthen them, particularly around the one that was put in for Spanish, because I think what resonated with me was, I mean, while prep time is important, a little context, I was part of the process 18 years ago when we launched it, and prep time was not assumed, so teachers were actually supposed to go to Spanish class with their classes and learn and try to integrate it as much as possible. Then with the budget cuts that we saw in the 2000s, we had to make some severe cuts, and we lost half of that position. So we went from 1st through 6th then to 4th through 6th grade. So I think what I would like to see as part of that impact statement, or as part of the discussion, would be, you know, the opportunity for students to come away incredibly strong in a second language versus the rationale for it would be to give, and I'm all for teachers having.
Well, no, I know, and I just brought that up because that came up in the essay.
And that does need to be addressed.
Sure.
And I will also add that 18 years ago, when we started this, it was not necessarily followed equitably across both schools. And we are where we are now, and I think we need to respect where we are now. But I think the rationale and going forward next year would be to think about how strong our students could potentially come out and be beefed up. And we know that, you know, the earlier we start with language learning, the better off we're going to be. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to bookmark that kind of to maybe look at from a policy perspective, like how world language, you know, maybe that is, you know, becomes reflected in operating expectations. Because to me it ties to citizenship, you know, learning a world language earlier, and to academic mastery, because there's obviously, you know, but there's all these ties, right? Like you do better in other things when you study language. So that's something I'd like to revisit. I mean, I assume you probably thought of this, but I wondered if when the current 1st grade gets to 3rd grade, we won't need that additional section, I'm assuming. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm doing the math wrong, but that would mean maybe that we could revisit it in like 3 years. And to me, it would make sense to have like a longer term plan to say, like, we're going to start integrating world languages and really think about it holistically,
Sure.
rather than, you know, a one-off.
Yeah, as I said, I think these are things that we can definitely just continue to come back to. So, and part of the regarding policy would be concerned. I mean, we have annual reviews of kind of world languages, for example, as part of Tim's results reports. So that would be another appropriate spot to be able to kind of have that conversation and be able to look at the context of it.
Yep. Can I ask that one? Are we done with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. The building and ground software, is that, I just wanted to clarify, is that being funded under existing budget or no?
At this point in time, it's not being funded out of existing budget.
Okay. Okay. Then I don't need questions.
I guess the only other thing is that the additional school psychologist. So and is that would be somebody here at or at the high school?
Yeah, so we would, again, we'll take a look at staffing. I think the way that we would end up looking at staffing for next year would be a full-time school psych at the high school, a full-time school psych at Lake Bluff, just due to student population kind of size, and then a split position between SIS and Atwater is what we've talked about. Again, that's with Dr. Anderson's recommendation. So that would be the three positions. Right now, we're split between the elementary schools and SIS and here with
Perhaps
two
it wasn't
positions.
reading the cover memo right, but in alluding to the student or to an intern school psych person coming in, right, that was the recommendation that perhaps an intern could gain experience, we could get a school psych personnel in the school. Did I read that wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that's just
The
looking at
budget-
option.
and
Yeah,
then the
so
budget
as we're
impact was for an MA plus 15 or MA plus.
correct.
So we're not saying we're gonna do
No.
the student intern, that's just an option?
Yeah, those are just, again, the impact statements and conversations are about, like, let's make sure we're kind of thinking about what's out there and what potential options are. We want to make sure we have a high quality person in this position as we would look at it.
But we're budgeting for someone with the experience
Right.
similar to our current
Correct.
school psychologist.
Yeah.
Correct.
If we need to scale down, we can scale down,
Yeah.
but we'd rather kind of maximize it through the budgeting process.
Okay, that seems a little contradictory. Okay. I just had, so with the 178,000 that you were looking at for some of those impact statements, are based on the 4 bullet points of savings and budget
Correct.
changes. And I appreciated the information about the 275 from the referendum and when that would go into play. For clarity, when does our state aid get reduced because of the referendum? Is that when we levy the 275, or is that when we borrow for the 65?
That will come into play, I believe it's next year, because it's impacted off of the expenses from the previous year. So that state aid impact will come in the following year.
So 19,
So it would be the 2021 school
Okay.
year.
Okay.
And that should be just, I mean, again, just a point of clarification, that state aid impact is not an annual thing for that 275,000. That state aid impact is on the increase in our expenditures. And so 1 year we increase it by 275 and we take that 33% hit. The next year, that 275 is it's the same amount, so we don't take a hit on it. We take a one-time hit in perpetuity. Plus the way the fund that my recommendation is that it goes into Fund 41, the longer we levy into Fund 41, the longer we amortize those expenses over time, and it actually becomes advantageous, being that we are negative tertiary. It will actually lower our shared cost and mitigate losses for state aid, which is why I'm recommending the district begin using that fund. It just makes sense.
And then, for the ones, for the impact statements that didn't like get above the line, as you called it, are the rest of them ranked?
Yes, they are ranked.
And so what's the process for the happy problem of, things costing less, or we're getting more money than we thought we would, and having the ability to put other things, to potentially budget other things?
That process would be going back to the executive cabinet and saying, we have X number of dollars left. Do we want to bring another one of these projects forward? Also would be, I think, looking at the type of project, because at this point in time, we're not going to know that information until we get to almost November. And so, you know, it may be that we're going to fund something that has a greater ability to have that impact at that point in time, as opposed to, you know, some programs can be added in the middle of the year, some programs just can't. It's difficult in the middle of the first trimester of school to add a new class.
Right, but I mean, yeah, so I was just wondering, no, if.
Yeah, we would bring
Because
that
some of
back.
these I think are, you know, like increasing FTEs and things that potentially could be done, so.
Correct.
Yeah, and again, there's some fluidity to this as we're looking at some of the FTE, the way things roll out between SHS and SIS, for example. Sometimes there's some wiggle room in there. And I mean, the reason, just for clarification, the reason why Patrick said November, when we would know, is from a state standpoint, that's when we'd have our final numbers and be looking at like the final approval for the budget. So it's a little wonky with the way the school year rolls out. That's the way that would be.
Right, the last piece that we get to set our final budget is delivered to the school district on the 15th of October, and then the board votes on that in their second October meeting, so.
So, quick question going back to the school psychologist. I noticed that Lake Bluff will have one full-time school psychologist, but Atwater will have 0.6 FTEs. Why? Could you explain the
Yeah, so
disparity?
Dr. Davis had kind of mentioned that we looked at enrollment, and so like our high school would have one,
Right.
Lake Bluff with the second highest enrollment would have one, and then SIS and Atwater would split.
Okay. Gotcha. And then, along the lines of the FTEs discussions, math implementer was proposed at, a half-time, 0.5. Back when implementers were initially implemented a long time ago, they were actually at 0.2. And I don't know if that discussion couldn't be back because, Emily, you pointed out, earlier in the discussion about the importance of really strengthening, like, the math in the 6th through 9th, and I'm wondering if 0.5 might not be feasible, but 0.2 might be.
I would probably push back on that, only in that if you only have off for one class, you're not getting as much done as what could possibly be done by an implementer. I think there's a significant amount of work and support that can be done, and if you only have one period off, then it's fingers crossed on if another teacher is teaching during that time or has prep during that time. So it's really difficult to have access to someone if they only have an additional period off, rather than like, hey, I have this half day and I can meet with you in the afternoon, or if you need me to help you in class and teach that lesson, like I can do that. It just opens up more possibilities.
So the idea behind the implementer would be someone that would go in and versus being like a kind of a coordinator of a curriculum.
It's
throughout,
yes and.
someone who's coaching.
Correct.
In the classroom.
Isn't it,
Gotcha.
just to be clear, that be just like a 1-year deal, or would that be forever, that person would be there?
In my mind, I think once we start down an implementer route, I think people would find them extremely useful, and to say, here's a 1-year nugget, now I'm taking it back, is kind of defeats the purpose. I think, kind of ongoing support would be really essential. So I would feel uncomfortable saying, let's just do it for a year and then pull it back.
I just wasn't sure, I
Yep.
didn't remember that, okay.
And then I had some questions around, I think it's become clear that I have a little bit of history here from my teaching days, but I noticed that the
What?
SIS leadership team stipend was going to be similar to stipends that are given out for other extracurriculars at SIS. And from my recollection, I got paid $900 to coach soccer back in 1996, and I'm just wondering what the process is of revisiting stipends. We do look at salaries and make sure that they try to stay on par with inflation. But I don't know that we look at some of those nitty-gritty things, those the extracurriculars that teachers do that really, it all makes a difference, but I'm just wondering, is there a process? How far back can we go to see? I'm just questioning whether 900 is fair, I think.
I think, number one, I think that's consistent with what they're getting in other buildings in the district.
Yeah.
Number two, I believe that, a couple of years ago, we did make a significant adjustment in the co-curriculars. And really what it boils down to is the dollars that we have available to do the work that we're doing. there are always requests for more salary, there are always requests for greater benefits, there are always requests for more programs, there are always requests for new, you know, software, whatever, for more money for maintenance, more money for stuff in the classroom, and then there's a limited pot of money in which to provide all of that. And so we look at what we're putting into salaries as a whole, and I think the last year that we made a significant investment in the co-curricular stipends was when we had a lower CPI and had the ability to divert more money into that year. So as far as an annual process, we really were kind of I feel we're kind of at the mercy of the dollars that we're getting from the state, the new dollars that we're getting, and you know what our raise percentages are.
Thank you for sharing. I just want to make sure that we could go back and revisit those, because I think those could go by the wayside, but apparently, you know, they haven't been. So just to make sure we keep an eye on those going forward, it'd be good.
As a follow-up to Haru's question about like how, you know, what if we end up with additional funds? There's later in the agenda, we're looking at the turf replacement, right? And so we have this special projects fund. I don't know, maybe it's better to talk under that agenda item, but I was curious in general about the process for like deciding what is funded through that fund, because there's quite a balance there.
Correct. If you remember that, those funds were from the transfer that we did from the community service fund. And so using those funds for we tried to use those funds as much as we could for projects that would impact both the school district and the community. And so saving a substantial portion of that money for this expensive replacement, I think is very foresightful, if that's a real word.
Well, and one of the things when did we do that? 4 years ago?
What's that?
Move that money from?
Yeah, I believe it was 4 years ago.
One of the things we had to do was kind of outline the projects we would use the money for, and so this was one of the things that we said, so.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so are there any questions about the text statement? I guess I wanted to just hear more about like the next time we'll see another budget update. Or the process, and you can speak for another person.
I was going to say that.
You will see another budget update from me. As a matter of fact, we will have our preliminary budget that will be brought to the board. My plan is to bring it the end of May.
A month from now? Okay.
Correct. That is I believe the years prior, I brought that the end of June, which is not going to be possible for me to bring that to you the end of June, and I want to, I mean, it's aggressive to bring that to you, but I think it's also feasible for you to get an idea of what I am seeing as the potential budgets for 1920. And then I also want to have that done in a timely fashion so that I can spend some time with the person who's going to be speaking to you about this next year, so that they understand how I develop that, so that as they go forward and make changes or recommendations, that they have that background. It's a very difficult thing to come into somebody else's budget and be able to just jump in feet first and manage that. So I'm trying to position the district in the best possible trajectory for fiscal year 20.
Okay, so May 28th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't leave, Tim. So an update on the kind of classroom planning at Atwater and Lake Bluff?
Yep, and so when I provided the documentation for this, we actually sent out information to parents at the same time about what those grade 1 structures would look like at both Lake Bluff and Atwater. This is an answer to, currently we have what we would call 4 sections at both Lake Bluff and Atwater of grade 1, and we only have 3 sections of K-5 enrollment currently, so we needed to have a discussion at both schools about what that would look like moving forward. And so the discussion was very long and very thorough, and it was focused not only on what do we do for next year, but also how do we make sure that we have some flexibility going forward. With that said, the really difficult part, and Emily, you kind of pointed out this, well, when that hits 3rd grade, the really difficult part is, yeah, I don't know, because we don't know what enrollment will necessarily look like. Will it go back up? Will it stay down? Especially at these early grade levels, K4 can be a pretty variable number, because oftentimes we get a bump in K4. Last year we didn't get a bump in K4, so it's always interesting to see where enrollment goes, but we did try to have discussions around flexibility, as well as just taking it as an opportunity to talk about what do we want to offer kids in general. And so Atwater was a little bit simpler of a discussion, and they currently at grade 1 have 3 single grade sections and 2 multi-age sections, keeping in mind that those multi-age sections are 1 class size. So if you want to use really simple numbers, use the number 30, right? So they're 15 grade 1, 15 grade 2. They're smaller than that, but that helps me in terms of a classroom kind of break it down into smaller numbers. So those 2 multi-age sections count as 1 section of grade 1, because it's 15 in one and 15 in the other. They count as 1 section. At Lake Bluff, it was a little bit more of a difficult conversation. We have 2 MACs, and those are going to be 2 full classroom sections of 1 and 2 in the same classroom, and then we have 2 single grade sections. And so through a number of conversations with our grade 1-2 team at Lake Bluff, what we landed on was a solution that in some ways gave us a chance to communicate better with parents, how we could move to, as you see, 2020 and beyond, a 2 single grade and 1 MAC section. And so what that will look like is 1 single grade section, 1 MAC section in Oak, and then 1 temporary MAC section. And what that will allow us to do is our 1st graders in the current Birch section will be able to move up to that 2nd grade, and we'll be able to, 1, give them an older experience, and 2, fill in any curriculum gaps that we may have had. So in those MAC sections, you're teaching 1st or 2nd grade ELA, social studies, science. You split apart for math, so you get 1st grade when you're in 1st grade, you get 2nd grade when you're in 2nd grade. But they'll vary back and forth. So we do have a couple of gaps to fill, and I use gaps not in a negative way, it's just how it came out with the curriculum. So that'll allow them to do that. That also gives, so our 1st graders will have the experience that they were anticipating when they went into 1st grade. They'll get that older experience in 2nd grade. And then we can communicate right now that going forward, you're gonna go into a straight grade, 3rd grade experience, as well as communicate with our current K-5 students. When you go into that temporary MAC, it is just that, it is a temporary MAC. From then on out, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, you'll have a single grade experience. And so what we felt was it really gave us an opportunity to communicate a bit better with parents, rather than have parents feeling like a rug was pulled out from underneath them, as well as give kids some experiences that they were planning for, and still give time for us to have some really good conversations about what that might look like in terms of change over time. And so that was kind of our plan for the 19-20 year, and then from there on out we look at 2 single grade sections and 1 MAC section going forward. What I did include was the letters that were sent home from both Atwater and Lake Bluff. I also included an FAQ that was sent to Lake Bluff. We had sent a parent survey to Lake Bluff. Again, that one was a little bit more nuanced than Atwater was. And so what the FAQ does is it highlights some of the questions that we were getting within that survey that we wanted to speak back to, so that as parents were getting the communication, they knew, yes, we heard you, yes, we took your input, and yes, we want to answer your questions as well. So those were some of the questions that kind of came up over and over and over.
So have you had any, so this went out on Thursday folders, right? And I guess we didn't have school on Friday. So have you had any responses from parents or questions in the last 2 days?
I was out sick yesterday, but checking emails, there's a wonderful cold going around that is just phenomenal to get a hold of. But I have not gotten anything in my inbox, and I haven't checked with Angela or Kayla as of yet. I also know, and when we planned the communication, we actually planned that with our grade 1 and 2 teachers, knowing that kind of a first line of defense for a lot of parents is to go to their teachers. So they were, before these letters were sent out, I sat down with teachers and said, here, I drafted this, give me some feedback. So there are a few changes depending on the school. And the letter that you'll notice, and then Lake Bluff also went through the FAQ sheet as well. So have I had any? No, but I can't speak on behalf of all of our teachers or principals as of yet.
And then there's going to be a parent night, right, at both schools to talk about both the changes and the differences and similarities between the two programs?
Yeah, Atwater I don't believe does that night, but I'll double check. I think they've gotten rid of that night, but I'll double check on that one. I know Lake Bluff has one being planned in May, and again, Angela and I were hoping to kind of plan that with some teachers there as well, so that we can have representation from our teachers.
Well, and maybe you could do like an elementary school one and have parents from both come. I just think, I think it would be good to have something in Atwater, just because I do think parents talk to each other, and then we'll be wondering, well, why didn't I get that?
Sure.
So.
I just was gonna say, I think, full disclosure, I have a kid who's in 6th grade. Hi, Sachin. In MacBridge, and I also have a kid in single grade at Lake Bluff, so just in case anyone's wondering. I just want to compliment you on the process. I think I can only imagine how hard that is, given that, teachers' jobs are at stake and kids' educational experiences at stake, and they were counting on things happening that won't happen. So I'm sure there will be some bumps, and the part of me that was proud to be part of MacBridge is sad, but I think this, from my perspective, what I've seen so far has been handled about as well as it possibly could. So, and that is a testament to the teachers and principals.
Yeah, and that's what I want to echo is our teachers did a phenomenal job of really having some difficult conversations. And kind of at the end, it was, we've given you our input and we kind of need to make a decision and move forward. And I really respect the amount of time and effort and energy that they put into it. So I very much echo that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
All right, I will take a motion to approve the Director of Equity position.
I make a motion to approve the Director of Equity position.
Second that.
So Brian included in our packet the job description, or the position description?
Yeah, kind of a job description / job posting that we'll look at as far as information. So that, again, has been put together and with some research done with other districts that have similar positions, along with many conversations from community groups, staff groups, to be able to look at the position and how we can best utilize the position. So a couple things I think that I learned as part of the process that I wanted to reiterate, and I think I mentioned this last time too, but one, and it was mentioned I think tonight, it's really important that we understand this position, and we'll reinforce this with all of our staff, that this position doesn't become kind of if you have an equity issue, like this person tackles all equity issues, that this position is really positioned as an opportunity to build capacity with all of our staff members within the district, so to be able to work with teams and be able to work through, again, that capacity building with not only our staff members and support staff members, but also with our principals and myself and our cabinet, to make sure that process is something that we take seriously in building that capacity through our reflective processes and the expertise that this position can give. Number two is making sure that the position has authority. So that was something that was talked about, and a lot of my colleagues have said that if they could do something else they could do something over, it would be making sure that the position has some organizational authority, the ability to move things, because it's one thing to be able to suggest something, but it's another thing to be able to really have an evaluation to be part of the process. So this position will be co-evaluating the principal positions with the C&I director, and so the ability for that position to have that authority is going to be really important as we move forward, and be able to do that work through capacity building with the principals and through the leadership teams at the staff level. And then the third thing was making sure that they had a budget, so having some resources, and so we have some allocations right now that are within curriculum and instruction, but that we've used annually around equity work, and so we'll be kind of redistributing that money from curriculum and instruction into money that this position will have, in order to make sure that as they're evaluating our programs and looking at resources, they'd have the ability to allocate those resources. So those three things have been really important that we wanted to build in here. I also want to clarify, because there's been some conversations from a community standpoint, that the seed contribution, that's something that I had gone to seed with and approached seed, that it wasn't anything that seed came to me with. And historically speaking, the seed has supported the advancement director position. When Ted Knight's position came up, they had supported the beginnings of that position until that came to be a full position taken on by the district. So just wanted to clarify, I had brought up that idea to their director of the Seed Foundation, gone to their board, and talked about that support. And so they've graciously provided us with 2 years of some support moving forward, to where we could take that on fully in that third year. So just some clarifications around that. But so again, the job posting, job description, upon any questions or approval tonight, we'll be able to get that rolling as soon as possible to bring somebody on, ideally on July 1st, and begin our work and continuing to engage in our equity work throughout the district and community.
Questions?
I want to just thank you for taking leadership on this, but I would encourage under qualifications to be very explicit about experience working with racially diverse populations.
Sure.
Right now it states preferred administrative license and significant teaching experience, but I think we need to be more explicit.
Sure.
In that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to say, initially I was really skeptical about this idea, and after hearing from students and families, changed my mind. So I think I'm in the minority here in thinking that private funding should not be part of this position, because it's really about ensuring civil rights are met. But I am grateful for the seed funding, and I support seed. So it's not that I'm not grateful for that funding. I just feel like if this is really our top priority, we should be willing to spend money on it. But I'm happy, bottom line, to see this position funded and in place. And also further happy to hear Brian listen to the community input and insistence that this has to be about building the capacity of our district and our community, and not about one person being the person tasked with solving problems. And also pleased that this is a permanent position and not something we see ending in 2 years.
I just want to echo that, and I appreciate the time and development, evolution of this position as from when you first brought it up through community input. And I guess I just want to point out that based on feedback that I've gotten from parents and students and groups in the district, that I'm planning on voting yes on this.
So can you talk a little bit about kind of where you're going to post this, and what kind of recommendations you got from the people you talked to about kind of expanding the breadth of job applicants? for this?
Yeah, and we've done that across the board for all of our postings. So one is to reach out through our informal networks as much as possible to make sure that our staff is aware that this position exists. I've talked to a lot of individuals both in our district and outside of our district that say, hey, like this person would be really great. So what we've seen through a lot of the research from hiring patterns is that personal touch and kind of getting people that are either in your network or passing it on to a friend of a friend is really effective. So one is making sure that we're advertising it internally, both in our district but also on the website to make sure that we can create somewhat of a buzz for that. We'll certainly go our traditional route, which is the our weekend posting. Traditionally, that hasn't provided a very diverse perspective. So we're also using, I can't think of the postings right now, but some are posting places where MPS has provided their jobs and just looking at like MilwaukeeJobs.com and other places like that. So just to be able to get it out there as much as possible, we'll do that posting for probably about a month is what we would typically do, and then assess where we're at that point.
Is it possible that like the finalists could maybe meet with community groups or even like Youth Rising Up or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would anticipate. This is a really important position for us, both internally and for the community. So I would absolutely anticipate, and similar to like we've done with other director administrative positions, provide an opportunity for them to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then do some question and answer and responding. And for me, that's really important to make sure that this position can speak to some specific examples, things that they've done. I think to Pablo's point, communities that they've worked with, students and parents that they've worked with, to be able to hear some of those stories. But then also to be able to think on your feet, to be able to publicly present, to be able to react. And that dynamic is really important. You don't necessarily get that around an interview table historically with some canned questions. So we'd like to see people in different areas. Certainly have the ability for staff to be able to ask questions and be able to work through it. So I would foresee the process to be pretty similar to what we do for most of our director and administrative positions.
Just a little technical comment. You can lowercase culturally responsive practices because it's not like EL or
But
something.
it's super important.
All right.
People like to capitalize things that are important. That makes me crazy.
You should take German.
Will do.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries 5-0. All right, and then we have a superintendent's consent agenda. I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the superintendent's consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, did you say something?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations to Ms. Rose on her new opportunities. All right, so we have.
Can I make a motion that we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, you can. Okay,
9:30.
5-minute recess. Thank you.
9:30.
Up next is public comments number 2. I just wanted to remind people to limit their comments to 5 minutes and that personnel issues cannot be discussed. And so I think, Beta, can you read off the next names, please? Thank you.
So I'm Lane Rose. I'm a teacher at Atwater Elementary School, 1835 North 2nd Street, so technically Milwaukee. But so I wanted to ask for some time to talk to the board about my resignation. I'm a passionate advocate for all of my students, especially my students of color. For this reason, when finishing my degree at UW-Madison, I specialize in urban education. Recently, I was given the opportunity to combine 2 of my teaching passions, project-based learning, in an urban school. I'm leaving the Shorewood School District to follow my passion, pursue opportunities for growth within the school, and continue my work with expeditionary learning. Though it's true that this was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, I wanted to shed some light on the problems I've seen in the district. I'm talking to you in hopes to address the deep-seated discrimination against our students of color, so more young, passionate teachers like me don't leave your district. Shorewood is making progress, for sure. However, there's still a lot to be done, and if you want to meet your goals of creating a quality education for all students, you need to hold teachers accountable and administrators accountable for actions and discipline, and or else the achievement debt will continue. Those actions are sometimes racist, and the discipline is doled out unevenly. I read an article from ascd.org that a parent from our district shared with me. This statement could not ring true for Shorewood. Racial equity cannot be achieved with an obsessive commitment to meeting people where they are, when where they are is fraught with racial privilege and bias. Students, families, and educators experiencing racism cannot afford to wait for us to saunter towards a more serious racial equity vision. They cannot afford to wait in particular for all the white educators to ease into racial equity commitments at a pace of our choosing while they suffer the consequences of our casualness. We must prioritize equity over the comfort of equity-reluctant educators. End quote. The teachers, parents, and that article, I attached it. So the teachers, parents, and community members that you keep seeing at these meetings, that keep emailing staff and the board, those are the same people that we desperately need to listen to. It begins with the people who work with kids daily. If staff, faculty, whoever enacts racist disciplines, beliefs, behaviors, it will hinder any progress made at a district level. Faculty keep a tight handle on what's happening at the school, and it's not always in a positive way. I've had experiences where parents have not been privy to the complete story of an incident, and employees can react with discipline for students of color before a full investigation. Punishing on hearsay when white students complain, but then not completely acknowledging families of color concerns is unacceptable. Teachers and administration get to be cop and judge without other input or deeper reflection on their actions. Faculty can continue to do race works outside the classroom, in the auditorium, away from students, and have these conversations, but I promise you that nothing will change unless action is taken. To the board, administration, and faculty, please listen to parents of color. Actually question the way students are being talked to and disciplined by staff and board and administration. We all need to sit in the room often and talk to each other and see what's happening on schools on a daily basis. I'm begging you to support staff who speak out. Protect them. Put them on teams with other like-minded teachers so they are not fighting an uphill battle they cannot win. And don't punish them for speaking their mind. Consider a whistleblower policy where anonymously teachers can talk about this and figure it out with other staff. Please push your staff and the people that work with students daily to reflect on their actions. And when they feel uncomfortable, that's okay, because we need a culture of being able to call each other out, not fear of retaliation. And please make teams that help your teachers have allies and grow together. Please help students feel like they belong, they're celebrated, and are accepted by prioritizing equity over white teachers' comfort and ego. Thank you.
Guess I don't have to wear my jacket, but like I'm supposed to. I don't know why, but anyway. Let me first start by saying good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
And let me start by saying it's been so long since I saw you last. I'm coming because since I last spoke to you, I've gotten more calls to my office. I was heartbroken to hear about a student that is disciplined differently, is very candidly, I question if some of the things that was done for a student who has a disability was appropriate. I'm devastated to know that a student, students have, a student committed suicide in Shorewood, and when the students wanted to show support, that they weren't allowed because parents felt it would be a challenge for their children. But yet, and that student was a student of color. And when, not long after, something happened to a non-student of color, it was okay to show support, do a fundraiser, and do that concept. When I heard about the disparate effect with the child with a disability, and that child then did a video to say that they wanted to commit suicide, I'm going to say the same thing that I've said for the 16 years that I've represented this district, that I continue to come and say. There is a deep-seated problem, and you can be leaders in this county. Why? Because technically Shorewood is the most progressive, is what we say. And when a child with a disability is saying that they are so unhappy that they want to take their life because a parent entrusted you with their child, and the parent felt let down because they were believing what the teachers and the principal and everyone was saying in the school. Whatever the reason, I don't believe that this isn't about bashing the teachers. This is saying somebody needs some additional help, because the pattern of what exists in Shorewood is not new. I could call 7 of my girlfriends that went here, and they could tell you the stories. Just not that long ago, because we're not that old. But they could tell you their stories. And they're the same kind of stories. I am your senator. I can only help as much as you allow. I hate to see this constant call, this constant challenge that families of color experience. And the part that's really weird to me is originally I thought it was like the open enrollment 220 thing. It's not. The families of color that are in Shorewood are having the same challenges. And people are now wanting to leave your community because of the harm that's happening to their children, the trauma that their children are experiencing. And somewhere along the lines, I need the children to be the priority, with all due respect, more than a teacher, more than a teachers union, more than anybody. Because that's what this is supposed to be about, the children. And so somewhere we're disconnected. I don't disregard that Shorewood is trying to have equity conversations. I don't anticipate that you can, with a click or with a twinkle of the nose, change 500 years. But you can do more than you're doing. You can do it faster than you're doing it. And I am very afraid of the equity position that you're creating. Not because I don't want to see someone here helping with equity, because I don't want that person, that position, for lack of a better way to say it, to be a scapegoat. And I respect that you want to bring someone in, and hopefully that person is going to be extremely credentialed in equity. And although you can't write it down that they should be a person of color, that would be great. But my hope is that they'll be there to help train people or whatever, but like not be the point person, because you need it in every one, because every classroom is its own little haven, or not. And I'm going to tell you, it's very hard to see through a lens that you only know because somebody shared with you or told you. I never wore glasses. And as you see, I don't have them on now, but I need to wear them. And so I say that to say, if you haven't done something, you're not quite used to it, and maybe you even put yourself in denial. I am pretending like I don't need my glasses. I don't. But if I really want to read this, I might want to have my glasses. Teachers may think that they see clearly, but they do not see through the lens of equity and inclusion in a way that is not harmful to your children of color, because if that was so, you would have never heard an African American young man tell you he walks around with his head down so that he is not falsely accused. That's him telling you, I don't know what words to say to make you hear me, for us to get to the place that I don't have to come, that to get to a place that I don't have to call the media, to get to the place that I don't have to do interviews, that I don't have to come and have meetings. I just want to be able to get to a place that, like, we hear and we're doing more preventive work than we're doing what we're doing now. Because what we're doing now, like, it does not feel good. And that can't happen if you don't have the will for that to happen. And I used to not know what affirmative action really meant. I don't know why, because it says affirmative action. But, I mean, I knew, but you know what I'm saying. I didn't, but now what I know is that you have to make an affirmative effort if you want it to be different. Everybody, from your janitor to your superintendent. And it's not going to be easy, because there will be people who are convinced they don't need glasses. They see clearly. And I'm telling you, as someone who always has to see through this lens, somebody who just before Easter stayed up all night trying to wonder where my black young man was. Well, black 19-year-old, so I guess he's an adult technically, but not. Stayed up all night because he was supposed to be with his dad and his phone was off. I was wondering, was he alive? There's a different experience for people of color. And in a community where people have been allowed to see things a certain way, it is so difficult for them to know my experience or the experience of my son or those pieces. And then it doesn't make them horrible people. They may feel horrible because they're being called out about something that they don't even see. What makes it horrible is when we ignore the people who are in pain and pretend as if it does not matter. That's what hurts at a level that I can't articulate. I was devastated to hear what I heard after I left this meeting. I was devastated. Not even in high school, that wouldn't make it right, but I would have felt better. Because I don't know how many of these children's trauma isn't going to be something that they carry with them for the rest of their life, and their parents entrusted their babies to you. So I encourage you to keep digging in, but I'm just going to be very candid. I believe that there's more that can be done. I think that there's more shadowing that needs to be done. I believe you do need a whistleblower policy, because I know what it's like. I get the clicks. We've had the conversation, you know, even of how the click stuff worked with me. So I'm just saying to you, this is hard stuff, but I'm going to end with this. But I believe you can lead in our county, in our state. I believe it. Well, mostly because I believe we have the best district and the best senator. So, you know, we're going to be able to do it. But seriously, because I believe that you're at least willing. I'm dealing with districts that are like in complete denial. Like, there is no white privilege. There is no racism. And I'm like, okay, so, you know, we have a little more work to do. but you at least are there. And now you have seed funding to do what you're doing. I hope that you do put it in your budget, because this needs to go along forever. It needs to go along forever. And thank you so much for hearing me. And oh, one last thing. I talked to the superintendent, but I wanted to make sure that I'm also saying it on the record, that the credentials need to also require that someone has certification in equity training. And the superintendent has promised to call my office so my chief of staff can explain it more thoroughly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else there? Thank you. Okay. Some kind of just reports from us. So, update on district referendum planning. So I think we probably want to call this now, I guess, facilities planning at this point. Since the referendum is passed. So one of the things that I want to do is kind of have this as a standing agenda item so that we can have an opportunity to hear from Brian about things that they've been working on, and also if there's communications that we want to put forward or meetings that are coming up. I guess what I'll say at this point is that there haven't been any, we're kind of like just starting. So as far as Brian, your team is meeting for the first time Monday?
Today, actually.
Oh, you
We
guys met today?
Yeah, we did meet today.
Okay, so do you have any updates for us?
I do. We met today to really just get kicked off. And it was an opportunity to bring the principals into essentially the same presentation that the board had, just to provide the overview of the scope and definition of roles and that type of thing. So it was nothing more than that. The principals weren't able to participate in that meeting that the board workshop that the board had. So we met, provided that overview, and then set up some dates that will be upcoming in early May. That will be opportunities for us to provide the same overview to staff at staff meetings, just because we haven't had follow-up from the successful referendum to staff. So to give them an overview, and then also to outline how staff will be involved in the process. So those will happen in early May, and then we'll then continue to have basically about every other week. We'll have some meetings with our district management team. So we just rolled that schedule out for the next couple months. Our next meeting will be, I believe it's May 7th, with the district management team, and that's going to be work with the principals and going through essentially kind of the line by line items that we had that as part of our assessment work, and making sure that we have clarity around what those items are, and going through any discrepancies that we have. So that's really probably the next 2 to 3 weeks worth of, probably the next month's worth of work with that team.
So one of the things that I think, I'm looking at the website, I think, and I know we talked a little bit about this, but I think we need to kind of obviously archive all the stuff that was about the referendum now. But I do think it would be, I want to have more of the information that you just talked about, like when meetings are happening, who's
Sure.
on the teams, all of that information, like at least somewhere where people can now go and see where that is happening.
Yes.
And get that information kind of separate from, I think there is going to be a community kickoff that we're going to do as well.
Yes.
But I think just to have a place where all that,
Yeah.
Where we can tell people it's there and like we know where to look for it.
Yeah, so we have a communications team is going to continue to meet. So we've got a meeting this Friday, I believe, to talk about that, and then some other things regarding the communications aspect of it. So certainly we learned that the website was a valuable resource as people went to get more information and thinking about which vote they would cast. So I think we can continue to have that be a conduit.
Okay. And I'd already talked to Caitlin about doing as part of our I don't know what we call it after the board meetings. I don't know what Caitlin is. The thing that gets sent out, newsletter.
Yeah, newsletter.
Thank you. To have something about the facilities on there as well, and kind of push people towards this website. So I think it's just kind of going to be important to kind of get that going.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wanted to tell you is that I reached out to owners reps to get a little bit more information, and I think I'll forward you guys the emails. I think probably we need to sit down together with them and have a meeting both of their answers were like, we can do whatever you want. And and they gave a whole bunch of things. But I think the thing for us to think about is that they said both of them said 1% of the total referendum cost is around what they charge. So that would be $650,000
Over what time period?
over the full time period. So
5 years.
yeah, and
5 years.
I think we need to think about what we want
Mm-hmm.
and then what services they provide. At our meeting with, I think it was Janet who made the comment, like what's the value added, and what defines success.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will also call references that they gave me to start thinking through that. But so I think I would like the full board to meet with them and kind of talk to them about what we're thinking before we move forward on that. If that sounds like a good plan to you guys.
Yeah, I'd be curious if they, I doubt it, but if they offer some sort of assurance that they would, if they're charging 1%, that they're saving us 2% or something like that,
Yeah.
they're looking for that kind of thing, or is that at least their target or something?
Right. And like I said, that's why I wanted to talk to the other, they both work with more than just educational groups. I'll send you guys, they have websites and everything, so I'll send it to you. They have teams, and it's just much more of I think there's more possibilities than less, actually. So we need to just kind of decide, have a better sense of what we want before we go down that road. But I just wanted to let you know that I did hear back from both of them, so. Are there any other facilities updates or questions before next time? Okay. So we need to select school board officers. This goes by motion and second and vote. So, let's remember who everybody is. Anybody?
Okay, well, I'll start. I move we elect Berger Shaw as president.
Second.
Okay, any debate, questions?
Thank you for doing it. If you're willing to be our president, thank you for your service as president over the last couple of years. I know it sometimes is a thankless job, but you are a great president and a great leader, and so I think we as a board would be very served well by you to continue. Not to say that the rest of us are not it, but you do a very good job.
Okay. I'm happy to do it again, so. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. I would like to put a motion to have Hillary Boyce as vice president.
Second.
Any discussion? I see this as a job of, as a step up to the next one, so, just so you know. Okay, and, but no, I look forward to working with you again.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do the job, continue to do the job.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So there is, Pablo, you are currently the clerk. I'll
Continue to be the president.
move that we,
Approve my signature.
that Pablo Muirhead be the clerk.
Second?
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Emily, you get a pass at the first time, so I don't know what member at large, Lance can tell you more about that job, but
It's the longest title.
yes, that's true.
I think at large, yeah.
Lance, I'd like to, Lance Weinhardt as treasurer.
Second.
Or someone, sorry. Okay, all in favor? Aye? All right, motion carries. All right, so I want to do the liaisons and I guess next, and Feda put up a list of the ones that we currently have. But and hopefully you guys have had a chance to read it. And Emily, if you have any questions, I feel like you've probably heard about all of these now. So the one, I would take off the by board, because I think we're gonna not have that as a special one, and I would add, I think I had mentioned that I think we should send somebody to Shorewood moving forward, since they have a school committee, that I think that would make sense for us to have somebody there who can report back on that.
The other one not on the list is the Human Relations
HRC,
Commission.
yeah, which is also new. So,
I'm happy to do Shorewood's moving forward.
okay. Pablo, are you willing to stay at SWASA?
Yeah, I've got it down to science now.
Okay.
5 to 7 in the morning. So that's a really, I really enjoy SWAS. I think we get a lot out of it, and there's good discussions.
So I think I'm on the WASB policy committee now for 3 years, so I will continue to do that for WASB. Who's been going to Shorewood today?
So I understand that was supposed to be Joanne. However,
Oh.
I also understand that she'd never attended one of the meetings. So,
Okay.
I,
Vote her out.
not to throw her under the bus when she's not here, but, I had done that before Joanne, and I'm happy to do it again unless someone else would like to take that role.
Would
It's
you wanna do that one?
largely advisory. You just sit there and, give
Ka-
input.
Sure.
Caitlin
Caitlin
takes
and
the
Ted.
lead as the staff person. And they
And-
meet kind of quarterly prior to the, planning of the Shorewood today.
I am an alleged communications professional, so I guess that makes sense.
Okay. I think, I don't know, I guess we'll confirm with Veda, like when they're actually meeting now,
Yeah.
so.
And I
Veda,
can put you in
Caitlin will
touch
know that.
with- Yeah, and get in the email from Paula Wheeler too.
Okay, and then Lance, are you willing to stay on HRC?
Thursday evenings are problematic a little bit. I'm happy to stay on SEED.
Okay.
I'm wondering, HRC working, I just wonder if that schedule
work
works
tight
better
together.
for anybody
Yeah.
else. Actually, they have subcommittee meetings every other month now, so it's really once every other month. And I guess then in that case, we could tag team. There's just some Thursdays I can't go.
Right. Should we keep that the way it was?
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of us should be willing to like step in if somebody can't go, so
Yeah.
that's fine. Hillary, I'll keep you at rec,
Okay.
and then that just leaves CISA, which I think you've been going to, right?
I have been going to, but if someone else would like to go to it, it's literally just the one evening of the CISA meeting. It's not a big priority. If someone else wanted to go, I'm happy
Is
to
it
step
annual
aside.
or monthly?
Annual.
It's
Annual.
just annual. It's just a one meeting. You go, you travel to the
Like all
CISA
day?
office. No.
Oh.
It's probably 45 minutes.
Oh.
CISA gives a presentation of the work that they do. CISA 1 officers give a presentation. You elect from our CISA cohort districts a representative to be on the CISA board, and then your role is largely done, and that representative takes over. So we are in a group with Nicolay and Cedarburg and Port and kind of the North Shore districts.
And then going forward, do you like communicate over with that CISA representative? No, they don't care, but okay.
Oh, no?
More of a protocol.
I can do that.
And that meeting will probably be coming up soon. Rita usually gets the information and forwards it. It is interesting. It's nice to meet other school board
Yeah.
members from other districts.
Okay, so did you get all that data?
Mhm.
Great. Thank you, guys. All right, speaking of SWASA,
Yeah, so our last meeting was basically a preparation for
The
the
legislative.
testimonies that were given at the last Joint Finance Commission, and tomorrow you're probably going to address this. We'll be sending a delegation.
Mhm.
Both you and Brian will be there, as well as
Yep, Amy Miller's gonna be there,
Amy Miller,
representing
Abe
SEA,
Goldberg.
and then Abe Goldberg. Yep.
So there's a lot of preparation around that, and then a discussion about some changes in a vendor that SWAS have been using, Hanover Research, that is, we hire them out to do 2 studies a year, and their prices are gonna be going up, so we're starting to look at some other groups that we might be able to work with. And when I say we, I mean SWASA. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think that's good.
To that was pretty much the gist of the last meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so, and I'll put the update of what Brian, myself, Brian, Amy, and Ava are saying at the joint finance hearing into the record for next meeting. But we'll be leaving a copy there, so.
Sure, yep.
So we'll see. All right, Wisconsin Teacher Pipeline update?
Yeah, so I went, the Wisconsin Board of Regents put together a task force to kind of study the huge problems we're having in developing our pipeline at a state and even national level. But in essence, like if you just looked at the Metro Milwaukee area, I think 25% of our teachers are 50 years or older, and our enrollment in teacher education programs across the state is down about 30%. So they basically have had these, the Board of Regents has tasked this work group, this task force with going around the state and kind of hearing from different entities. I got invited, it was open to the public, but I went with my work hat on and also my school board hat on to talk about some of the things, some of the issues that came up as possible, solutions. And one of the big challenges is the fact that student teaching is an unpaid 6-month internship that really limits who can become a teacher, especially if we're now pulling from an older population of folks. Very few people that I know could take a 6-month leave of absence to work for free. So looking at it, and we've had these discussions here, what could we do on a local level, but really I think that for the change to happen, it needs to be broader on a state level. We talked about the importance of recruiting more folks of color into the teaching ranks. And then here's a shameless plug: next week, Tuesday, we're hosting a roundtable discussion on building the teacher pipeline at MATC, where I chair the teacher education program. And we've got Dr. Deborah Kerr, who's the superintendent of Brown Deer Schools, and she was part of this task force. She's one of the leaders of the task force through the Board of Regents. We've also got State Representative David Bowen, who's on the Education Committee, and we have recently elected MPS Board Member at Large Bob Peterson, who will be part of this roundtable discussion that we're hosting next week at MATC, which was kind of a spin-off of the Board of Regents. So thanks for letting me get in a plug for.
No.
What time?
It's going to be from noon to 1.
At MATC.
At MATC.
Oak Creek or downtown?
Downtown, M616. So should be good. And we have some.
Thank you.
We're gonna have some food.
Okay. Okay. And then SEED was last night.
Yep. So last night at the SEED meeting, there were 3 presentations on SEED grants that were implemented last year. 2 Atwater Elementary ELL teachers talked about their SEED grant on immigrants in our community for grades 1 through 6. Another was on French teaching at SIS using iPads. The SEED allowed the purchase of the iPads. Included FaceTiming with and conversing with students in France and using the language apps. And then another grant on focusing on indigenous cultures, and the grant allowed the purchase of books and the funding of a research project by the students, and that's continuing to be refined each year. So I guess the main point of that is I think it seems like the teachers are doing really great creative stuff with the help of SEED's funds and these grants, and a little bit goes a long way in making an impact for these students. It sounds like the SEED fundraising is ahead of pace for last year. The goal is $150,000 for this year, and they're ahead of pace from last year. And this Thursday, North Shore Boulangerie is having they're hosting a SEED lunch from 11 to 2. So if you're going to eat lunch somewhere Thursday, go there, and that benefits the schools. I believe I got this right. March 7th is next year's swing for Shorewood, so you can mark your calendar now.
Wow.
They are on it.
Never too early.
They are on it. And I just want to say thanks again to SEED for the seed funding for the equity director position.
Awesome. Okay. So linkage update. I wanted to see what you guys thought about how we want to do linkages. So we have 6 weeks left of school. 7? 6? It's like more or less 6 because you can't count that last week. And I was looking at the calendar and feeling like, OMG, there's a lot going on in the next 6 weeks. And I also am thinking about the conversations just hearing from family members and teachers here. Like, how do we want to, I think we want to talk to parents and community members, but, so anyway, I was thinking that maybe the best way to move forward would be we have 3 school board meetings before the end of the school year, is to essentially have town hall meetings prior to each of them, since they're already, those are already scheduled. There are already there would be conflicts, for sure, during that time, but invite people to come and speak to us before a board meeting versus trying to find another time outside of that. We don't have at this point anything else scheduled at those times for us, so we would be available. So do that for the next 3 meetings as kind of town hall meetings, and again, just advertise it widely to the parent groups and school groups that we would invite, but then still do a separate one. Something with teachers, either the SEA or the full teaching staff. Something with YRU, so we would go back to see them, and then I think we probably should go see the seniors. Go to them and that group. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't know what people think.
Can you say that again? You're suggesting that we do the town halls during the
prior.
Alternate
So
Tuesday? Oh, just before the meetings. Okay.
Yeah, so that, because they're already on the schedule, I mean, like I said, I looked at the May calendar and I was like, okay, it's just gonna be hard to find time that doesn't, I mean, there's always conflicts.
Yeah.
But we also will be all doing passages for 2 weeks. And so I'm just trying to think about and also I think, I don't know, it was just one way to do it. It was just a suggestion.
Could we add or ask Caitlin if it would be feasible to do at least one of those town halls as a Facebook Live or live tweet, and then have people be able to submit questions? Because if they're even if they're
sure,
sitting through a soccer game or something, they could be like, hey, what's up with this? And I just, questions about the referendum, et cetera. And, that's you're still able to filter that so that if you have, 8th graders sending nonsense, you can filter that out. But if there are legit questions, it just is another way for people to send questions.
Yeah, I'll ask her. I've only participated on the sending questions part of that, so I don't know the other side.
It's all right. I mean, it's just an iPad, I think.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah, I think the 3 town halls make sense to capture kind of broad-based concerns and even specific concerns, but in timing and trying to meet with people and wrap up the year, I think those logistically make sense. And then meeting with the students and the other groups that you mentioned, I think certainly our priority. I think the teacher meeting, my preference would be a larger teacher meeting, not just with the SEA leadership. But that would just be my preference as we look to schedule something.
Okay, and I can find out, I'll be spending a lot of time with the SEA leadership tomorrow in the car, so I'll find out when they do have, I think, an all faculty meeting at some point, so, okay. Anybody else? So I'll get back to you, I'll talk to Caitlin about that. And then the way that would work is that, do all of us have to be, would all of us be together, or would we all be separate on our iPad?
Oh, no, if Caitlin can be there, or somebody else can be there and just have the iPad on a tripod.
Yeah, we'd all be here.
We'd all be here.
Right, and then
Okay.
they just monitor and say, hey, there's a question from Facebook Live, and they wanna know this,
Okay.
if conversation lags. And then if we don't, we could either alternate,
Oh, I
like, a
see,
live
so do
question.
it during one of those other ones, not like, not
Yeah.
add, oh, okay,
Correct.
cool.
We
Okay.
could do it in addition, but we could also just live, like, here's the conversation,
Okay.
and then it's also saved, like, that's the other
Right.
bonus, cause if somebody missed the town hall and they were like curious what we talked about, or their friend told them that there was an exciting conversation,
Okay.
cause we know it'll be thrilling,
Okay.
that way they don't miss it.
They are, it's really.
Any
And
other?
this time I'll be there.
Pablo, any other?
Well, we had talked before about adding linkages with some of the younger students, but we landed at waiting until the fall to
Yeah.
possibly do that in light of every, where we are. on the
Yeah,
calendar.
I mean, I think the thing to remember for next year is that, I mean, we can't start in May. So this was like an unusual year because of
Right.
the referendum stuff, but yeah, so. Okay, so I'll work with Caitlin, or with Fana on that and Caitlin.
I think, you know, just in light of some of the comments tonight from teachers, I would like to, I mean, granted, the calendar is crazy, but if we can prioritize that bigger faculty meeting with us and make that first on the calendar, I feel like
I
that
think
would
that
be
when we
beneficial.
met with the SCA last time, there is a meeting that they're having that we were gonna see if we can.
Okay.
I mean, they have a lot that they talk about, so we have to just figure out like if we can kind of join in on that, but yeah. Okay, so I'll get that, information to you guys, and then, Lance, HRC Commission?
Right, I can tell you, neither Pablo or I were able to attend that meeting, but, it was a good summary. I have a good summary of what they did that summarizes the last year and what they're planning on prioritizing. So let me just share that
Okay.
with you. HRC is residents working together as sort of under the village board to focus on human relations issues, and they've spent the last year really kind of defining what the group is, how they're going to work together, and really building cohesion and a working relationship with each other. And so they're starting now to connect with other groups like Shorewood Moving Forward and the Elder Services Advisory Board, and talking with those groups about how to work together. So that's exciting. This past year, again, they formed subcommittees to focus on particular priorities. They created their structure of meetings and agenda. They did have get into a discussion about the review of a holiday decoration policy for the village that kind of respects all religions and so forth. So that was kind of one of the first beefy issues that they got into, and also brainstorming ways for the police department to provide data and information to the commission, because they want to focus on having improved relations with the police. And then for the next 12 months, they're really focusing, they have some very specific and interesting things that they're focusing on. They're going to initiate an event called Diverse Dining, which is 5 dinners where there's a facilitated dinner on diversity, ageism, and cultural exploration. They're going to collaborate with the police department, again, to acquire data and information, formulate recommendations towards language for hiring in the RFP process and for the village. They are going to, again, focus on the holiday decoration policy and, again, be there as a vehicle for concerns as they come up in the community for a place to go. Because other than that, there's really not a subcommittee of the board or anything that people can go to. So it's kind of an exciting group to be a part of. So.
And then, do they meet, like, they continue to meet all summer, right? Or are they taking
That's
a
a
break?
good question. I don't know that they're planning on taking a break. I'm not seeing that. But what they've done is shifted to a schedule where they do subcommittee meetings one month,
right.
and then the more everybody's together the next month. So it's kind of a 6 business meeting a year situation right now. So I think they'll probably go through the summer.
Okay, and then, all right, well, I've been meeting, I know that was that the meeting also where like Shorewood Moving Forward and other groups came to kind of talk about collaborations?
I believe Shorewood Moving Forward was there at the
Yeah.
last meeting.
So I know that that's another thing that they're trying to do, so, okay.
Yep.
It'll be helpful to have, kind of people at both Shorewood Moving Forward and HRC to see how that's kind of moving forward, so that's great. Okay, thank you guys. Patrick, are you gonna come back up and talk about the field turf? So I will take a motion.
I move that we put new turf on the field.
I think.
Oh, I move that we
Approve the contract for
approve the
placement
contract, right?
in an amount not to exceed.
Okay. I move that we approve a contract for replacement of that turf at John F. Nichols Stadium in an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Any seconds?
Second.
Thank you.
You're second a serious motion.
So, I think we all agree that we need new turf, all of us who've been out there. I had a question about the 8-year life expectancy. Is that like the usual for that kind of?
Depends on the grade of turf that you get, and so, and field turf has come a long way in the last 10 years. One of the things that, I mean, the turf, and you know, we looked at the bids from 5 different firms, varying qualities, varying inclusions in their bids. And then we also did research on, again, I often have talked about the 3 things everybody wants in life. They want the best product, the best service, and the best price. The only problem is you only get to choose 2. And we had some issues with the quality of our last turf, and we had some issues with the service on our last turf. And so as we work through this process, what rose to the top is looking at the service that we're going to be able to get on this, looking at the quality of the product that we're getting, because those 2 things are going to speak directly towards the life expectancy. You can buy something that has a life expectancy of 8 years and get 7 years out of it. You can buy something that has a life expectancy of 8 years and get 12 years out of it. So the turf that we chose and the company that we chose, their service is exceptional. They have actually serviced our field, even though they didn't sell us our turf. And this is true of other schools in the Milwaukee area that we talked to, where this company has actually been more responsive to their needs for turf repair than the company that installed their turf. They have local service people. Their installers are local. You know, they're not just bringing up a firm from wherever they can find a firm. So the quality is exceptional. 3 times the fiber that we have, and I know I'm getting into the details here that you probably don't care, but I mean, this is not a cheap thing. But what we are looking at is something that has a 10-year non-prorated guarantee. If they're willing to put a 10-year non-prorated guarantee, it's a quality product, because they know in year 9.5 they can be coming in and putting a whole new field on for nothing. Okay.
That was my first question, about the guarantee.
Correct.
Okay.
In addition to that, we were able to negotiate with them that they will provide us with 10 years of twice annual inspections. And in the first 3 years of those inspections, they will also perform a sort of a refresher maintenance, where they will do deep grooming and some antibacterial, antimicrobial treatments. So for the first 3 years, we get that, and then we have twice annual inspections that are at no cost to us. So I feel like the service that we're getting from them is going to set us up much better for this turf, even with a 10-year guarantee, to potentially last 12 to 15 years. And the reason that our turf is in the shape that it's in is after you get about 2/3 of the way through the life expectancy of turf, you usually lose about 1/3 of the fiber, and that's when the turf starts to get hard. This turf has 3 times the fiber that a entry-level turf has, so even if we lose a third, we're still going to have more fiber than an entry-level turf. So we're looking at an exceptional product that's going to serve the district very well, and there are so many groups that use this turf. So we talked with Tony, we talked with LeVar, we talked with the rec department. LeVar talked with all of the coaches that use that field. We talked about the different options, and this is the recommendation that we're bringing to you.
So regarding the usage of the field, are we getting some revenue through rent of the field?
That was actually on one of the impact statements. So yeah, we do get revenue for rent that comes into the general fund.
Okay.
That, again, it's not going into a designated, there's a separate fund. It's essentially going to offset the school's cost of maintaining that.
And then another question, as someone who, walks by there quite often, I guess I'd like to suggest that we add signage to prevent people from riding their bikes or skateboards or rollerblades on the track and or field.
I've talked about that for 5 years.
I think there used to
We'll
be
see
a
if I can
sign.
get that done.
Yeah.
They don't have the sign, there used to be one.
No, it's pretty
They're very
laissez-faire,
small, and they're not at every location. 2 of the things that I've talked about is improving our signage and adding signage that recreational walkers should not use the inside 2 lanes of the track.
Yeah.
Because they continually go around that, and so you're going to have the inside 2 lanes that wear down faster than the outside lanes, which is pretty typical.
So I think that might extend, the life of it a little bit. But in the summer, I'll see kids with bikes on the fields. with dogs, but,
People throwing balls with their dogs on the field.
Yeah, kickstand, little things that will dig, and, having run around on that field, there are some, at least at the end of the lifespan, some pretty big.
Maybe the
ankle
sign should
breakers.
say, this field just cost us $500,000, so please don't. please
I'll let
treat
you
it-
guys
Leave a donation.
determine
Yeah.
the
What-
percentage.
So with the last one, was the issue that it was an inferior product, that it wasn't maintained properly, or that it was it's more open than other schools' fields and so?
It's an inferior product.
Okay. And did we get any, there was no guarantee with that one?
It was
did we get
8
any money
years,
back?
right?
Went beyond the
The
life
lifespan of that one was expected to be 8 years, right?
Correct.
And we're at 9.
So,
But it was-
yeah, so we're at 9 now.
Oh, I misread it. I thought
Yeah.
it said it was 5.
No,
No, I think we
Okay.
paid, yeah.
Okay.
We
So
missed
we made
going
the-
to state and soccer, which we could possibly attribute to the
I'm with
loss of
you.
fiber and the.
So I think what you've seen is an evolution of the turf
Right.
product and industry, and that we're in just a much better place than we were
Okay.
at that time.
So that, I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Okay, that's a good segue to my question, is there's nothing here about, environmental impact, and I wondered, is this, and if you don't have know this offhand, but I'm wondering, is this EPA regulated, who decides that this is safe? Cause I just, I think about Pablo down the road, it drains right into the river, and do we have any idea what then runs off that field into the river?
If there was an EPA issue with the infill that they put in these products, there's no way that they would be able to sell them across the country. Essentially, it's sand and
Okay.
pelletized rubber. So
So it's rubber, okay. I didn't know what it's made, I was looking to find out what is this stuff made of. Iron?
sand and, the fiber is made out of, I don't even know what the fiber,
But there is, there's little rubber, beads in it, or
Yeah.
seeds, so.
Well, the textile, whatever, the fiber, I guess it's proprietary, so I didn't know if it's
Correct.
Petroleum or it's, what it's made of. That's why.
These fields are designed with drainage
Okay.
in mind, and so for them to put a product out there that's going to leach
Right.
chemicals or
Yeah.
carcinogens or anything like that into the groundwater is
Okay.
they're gonna be very short.
I
for
found a lot of
business.
conspiracy theories online, and I want you to know that I ignored them. So, there's a whole natural turf industry that is like, don't buy this stuff.
Can I
but
just
it's
tell you why?
Wisconsin. It's Wisconsin.
Can I tell you why natural turf will not work in the Shorewood School District? What's that?
Because we live in Wisconsin? Is that the answer?
No, because we have an incredibly active recreation department.
Right.
And if you go and look at other turf fields, they get played on one Friday night a week during the football season, and maybe if they're lucky, the soccer team gets to play their games on it. Otherwise, nobody gets on it. And we have football, soccer, lacrosse, the rec department, and they're using that field all day long, into the night, on the weekends. There's no way that we would be able to maintain a grass field with that amount of traffic.
This is gonna maybe seem a little trivial, but I just wanna mention this in regard to this and any other deconstruction we're doing, because they're gonna remove that turf, is that we might consider, I don't know, people might be interested in purchasing, to benefit the school, some of the logo stuff that's on the field. I'm thinking when the Copper Dome comes off, in that process, that, there could be a fundraiser in there, rather than just having them haul that stuff off. And
Correct. It would have to be timed, because again, it's done, I mean, they'll come in and within a week, they
I
have.
understand it, yeah, we could maybe, I don't know how it would work, but.
Right.
It's
It would
part of
be-
that planning process.
Yeah.
By a square foot.
Yeah.
That would be something that Ted might wanna.
Ted will be all over that. Ted loves that stuff. so.
I didn't realize, that's a good idea about I didn't think about the logo.
Logos, yeah.
Being on there.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if people want like crappy turf, but.
Maybe we shouldn't name it
It's-
crappy turf.
No, but whatever.
Historic.
It's
Professional
special.
district turf.
It's historic.
Okay.
Ted would say it's
If
special to
anybody
something.
that's looking to put turf
That's
in their
right.
lawn,
Sorry.
so they don't have to
Conference
mow
champion,
anymore,
turf.
we do that.
Ted will figure
And
it
then
out.
this is installed in July.
It's gonna be installed, it'll be from July through, they have a window, July through August. But they said once they begin the process, it typically will take 4 weeks. Because what they have to do is they have to take all the turf off, they have to cut it, roll it, and then it's disposed of. And then they are going to, they have to check all of the base material. If you walk on the field, after 10 years, base material is settled in some spots. So that's all included, which is another reason why we went with this company, because they had the lowest cost for those sort of hidden costs, the base material, stuff that we really don't know what they're going to have. Nailer board replacement, that type of stuff. And then while we have the turf off, we are also going to be checking the drainage system. There's actually a holding tank underneath that field that allows the storm water to drain off in a measured amount. And I believe we have only had one time in the history of that field where there was so much rain that the turf actually bubbled up. So because that happened, we're just gonna check everything to make sure that the drainage is good. That is not included in this price. That's something that that's the responsibility of the district. We figure we have the turf off. Now is the time to look at it and make any changes.
We can't use the special projects fund to pay for that if we need to do that?
Well, if we do have some contingency funds left in the special projects fund, depending upon the amount of work, about $20,000 after we pay for the new turf.
Okay.
So we can, as long as there's funds left in it. Otherwise, it's going to have to be a maintenance item.
Is the other, because there's like $2.5 million in there. What's the, right? No.
Correct. Well, the special projects fund has many other funds other than just that Fund 80. That's where all the meet the match money goes. That's where
Gotcha.
special projects,
Okay.
student accounts, not the student accounts, but like, no, if a teacher is leading a group it goes in the special projects fund.
Okay.
If it's a student-led group, it goes into a different fund, so there's
funding
many
is
other
a portion of
funds,
that.
it's just a
Okay.
portion of it.
That was my mistake.
Okay, so, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye? Motion carries 5-0. Thanks, Pat. All right, I have a board consent agenda.
I move that we approve the board consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Last opportunity for public comments for tonight.
Thank you, I'm back. Senator Lena Taylor, 1518 West Capitol Drive. I felt compelled to come back and share a couple of things. The first is, one of the things that I was told is that the district was working with Mr. Jackson, Reggie Jackson.
We have them, yeah.
So I spoke to Mr. Jackson and I was with him today. And he said that that actually is not true. And that the last and only thing that happened is the one event, or I'm not using his terminology, but the one, I want to say maybe it was something that included a talk back and something to do with the play or something or another. But I want to say that because as you continue to move forward, what made me want to come and say something is, I don't know that we've apologized to the parents. I don't know if we've replaced the alumni's mural. I don't know if we understand that we're having a meeting to talk about the pipeline of teachers, and you have Representative David Bowen, who hasn't even spoke up for diversity of people of color in the Capitol, and Bob Peterson, and
This, by the way, is not Shorewood.
well,
That
praise
is
the Lord.
MATC.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
That can come off the list, but let's just go with, you called him to help you with the play. And when you called him to help you with the play, if you call individuals of color to help you with something, who are individuals who will not tell you what you need to hear, then it really is also a part of the problem. Because sometimes you'll get someone who will make you feel more comfortable, so you're just more comfortable using or being affiliated with those individuals, maybe instead of individuals who are speaking truth to the situation. For example, our governor had a staff of all white women, one Asian woman, and one person that I forget what she was. Forgive me. Not one black woman. They put the picture out on International Women's Day, and they thought it was great. I sat in a room. There's only, you can cut off a couple thumbs and fingers. It's not many black people in the Capitol, 17 to be exact. That's including legislators. Nobody said anything but me. So I hear you, but I know what happened with the play. And I know where I stood, and thank goodness for individuals like Alderwoman Vukovic from Glendale, who went to Shorewood and came and spoke truth to the situation. So it matters. I also wanted to say, when you ask where to send information about the equity person, please include media of color. Please include the WNOV, WGLB, the Courier, the Milwaukee Times, the Community Journal, El Quisador, the Hmong TV and Hmong paper. It's very important. If you put something in the Journal Sentinel, I can guarantee you it's not going to be an affirmative effort. An affirmative action will require you to ask and think about and get those things in front of individuals. And I wanted to, end with, it is so important that as we build trust, that if we say we're working with someone, that we should be working with them. Because working with them means not that I did one thing with them, but working with them means I'm literally still working. Worked one time is very different. And so that challenges me, because as you move forward, I want to believe what you tell me. But I spoke to the person you told me that you were working with, who said, well, that's not quite correct. Haven't talked at all anymore.
Well, I have to say that's odd, since I was at the 3 meetings and so were other people in this room with him. So I don't, and whatever, it's a misunderstanding.
It may be, but I look
and I
forward
appreciate that comment,
to
but
that follow-up.
yeah, that's
I
fine.
look forward to that follow-up, because what I saw or what I expected when I heard working with is like, Mr. Jackson, we have some challenge, and he is ongoing working with you in that process. I'm saying to you that based on the meeting I had with him today, when we happened to be at another meeting, and when I saw him at the Cory Booker event, he does not have the same understanding that he has done something consistently and is still doing something with you. And that gave me peace to think that that existed. Because I'm like, somebody's going on the journey with you. Because I'm talking, trying to be helpful and coming and, and doing, but I need somebody that's going to walk this journey with you, who is skilled outside of just your equity even person. And it's important where you advertise in order to get people, because people will often say, I couldn't find any qualified black people, and I just need you to know I hate when I hear that, including from my governor telling me that they hired the most qualified people when they didn't even read the resumes or give people a call. And so I want to see different. And so I felt compelled to say that, because I wasn't maybe fully realizing that it was a MATC thing or whatever, but I was thinking one of the things that would be very useful that I heard the Lutheran school that's in the northwestern portion of my district, whose name is leaving me, and this is being videoed. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Anyway, they grow their teachers from the. No. I'm sorry. But it'll come to me when I'm gone from you all. In the middle of the night, I'll wake up and say, it was. But my point is, they grow their teachers from their student body. Mm-hmm. I hate that you've missed some of those opportunities, but you have some great educators that you guys invested in that went through your district. I encourage you to consider growing your pipeline of teachers, and especially of teachers of color, through your students that you have invested in. And then I'll leave you with, because of the weather and because of several things that have gone on, the Blood Center has less blood and need individuals to please donate. So I'd like to ask you to consider going to the 4th Synod District to the Bavarian Inn on the 25th and donating blood. And Alderwoman Vukovic from Glendale, Shorewood alumni, would love that support.
Thank you.
She only needs 4 more people.
All of you.
4 pints. Sorry.
One of the things I just wanted to add to the conversation is that we have different parents that have come to the board to express different experiences, and as well as alumni, being an alumni, going through the school district as a student and now a parent. And I think that conversation is critical, and I'm asking that the board take time to meet with parents of color in particular, and also the alumni, because our stories are not different. And although, which is very surprising, the union came out very publicly about and took a strong stance against students without having the investigation complete, without even having conversations with children is absolutely an indirect correlation to what we're talking about being diverse and being sensitive and being culturally responsive to all students. That's problematic. And so what I do want to impress upon you, students of color matter, students with disabilities matter, and I'm asking you all to make time in your schedule to reach out to parents of color, because we do matter. And we should not only be seen, but to be heard as well. And although we're not great in number, but we are part of this community, and our students matter as well. And I definitely don't want it to become a climate of us versus them. But I want to be very clear that when we have students that speak up and say that I'm being hurt in any manner, and we're teaching them we are crew, we are a community, we are in this together, and then the very people that are standing in front of you to educate you come out with such a strong response instead of waiting for the investigation to be complete and then have a response, it speaks volumes. So we had teachers come together as one, and we had the parents of color come up individually telling our story, pouring out our hearts. That's a huge graphic, it's a huge visual, and it makes you wonder. And so Senator Taylor talked about having to wear glasses. I've always known I had to wear glasses. And so when I talk about systems thinking, about thinking framework, that's what I'm referencing. The inability to see someone else's position, the inability to be reflective, the inability to put yourself or forget that it's even if you say, you know what, I don't get the whole black thing, even if you say, it's not my child today, but it doggone sure will be another day. If we don't take the time to listen and to implement change and action, your child is next.
Thank you.
Can I get the hard copy back of that? I did get the email, but I still want the hard copy just so I can make sure I have everything. We have that, right? Because I was told we saved it last time.
We only saved the electronic.
We have the we can get a printout of the,
I
that's
have
what we have.
the printout of what was typed.
That's what we have.
But I don't know if someone got all of my writing right, typed every item that was on there, and I was told that we had saved that. We don't have that?
No, we didn't save that, we saved what was on there and typed that out there, so.
Okay.
We can check and see, but.
All right,
but
because I
Fed
had
had
been promised that I would get it back.
Fed had transcribed that right off of the document, so.
Huh?
Fed had transcribed that right off of the document, so.
I respect that, and no offense to you, but I like to trust but verify. So, thank you.
Okay, so, review of to-do items?
So I have checking with Senator Taylor's office regarding the equity credentialing, and then I'm going to follow up with the media request as far as for the posting, for the equity posting, to be able to do that. Follow up with Ted on fundraising for either saved turf or copper dome or something like that as we move forward. And then I'm also going to touch base with, this didn't come up specifically, but touch base with the New Horizons students that we heard today, because I think when thinking through kind of the equity leadership from a community standpoint, I think they can really be some valuable resources for us and figure out a way to involve them as part of that process. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I'm going to follow up with Bodan and with those students as we move forward. So.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be inappropriate, but can I just ask that it be with Cordelia Michelle Bryant, that the connection is with Cordelia
Sure.
Michelle Bryant, so that you're not just talking to anybody in the office, you get the right information, which is my chief of staff.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to, I guess first start with the linkages and kind of taking Rashonda's last point, I will add kind of we did have a parents and alumni of color linkage, so I'll add that to the list.
Thank you.
And then talk to Caitlin about the Facebook Live event. I think also then work with getting the updates, I guess, on all the other kind of calendar events that we discussed. And then I think, yeah, so that's kind of to do. I think I will CC you guys all as well, follow up with the parents that we heard from today and our senator about their comments. Brian, I think it would be helpful for us. I feel like both sets of teachers who came up here talked about kind of wanting something from administrators and administration, and so I would like to see at the next meeting kind of a report from you, what
Sure.
Steps you've taken to address those concerns.
Yes.
Anything else that I missed? Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention to everybody is that next Wednesday is the Authentic Learning Showcase. I think I sent it to you guys in an email, but it would be good if we could all be there 6 to 8 o'clock. I'm assuming there'll be lots of IC and website push outs on that, so
Yes.
about it. So,
Yep.
okay. Anything else that I missed?
Is that something too that can go in the village manager's memo? I'm not sure what you had planned to put in, but if we can invite the community at large to come to that, because I always think that's an enjoyable night to see.
Yeah.
It's a really good idea to get what our students are doing.
Yeah, I'll confirm that with Caitlin. She's probably got that on.
Okay. Any other future agenda items?
The only thing that I wanted to kind of put out there, and I think tonight's comments sort of solidify my desire to do this, is to have a standing agenda item, not only for facilities, but for equity updates. And the timeliness of that, I think, is something we can discuss, but I do feel the need to not only talk about what has been done, so that people are aware of the work that's continually being done, but so that we can also say what else needs to be done, or who do we need to be talking to. Because I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between what we hear, what parents hear, what's happening, and I feel like if we have a place that we're going to talk about it regularly, it would be helpful. Because I think the point tonight that was raised about it not, like let's do this, and it's not something that we need to keep putting off, and I don't think we are putting it off. I think we are constantly working on these issues that were brought up tonight. But I'm not sure that we're talking about them enough in terms of a consistent and measured way. And so I think there might be a way to do that by having it as a standing agenda item.
So Emily actually suggested the same thing, and I said that what I'd like to do is at our board retreat on next Friday is look at the work plan for the next year and see, because one of the things, my only pushback on that would be that I want equity embedded in all the other work we do. Yes. And so thinking about how it comes up in all the reports and all those things. So thinking about how do we bridge those two things? And I just think we need to have a conversation about that. And looking at the full year calendar would be helpful in kind of doing that. So, okay. So I'll put on it's on the retreat agenda. All right, we made it. It's only 30 minutes after now, so thank you for all of you. Yeah, right. Thank you for all of you staying. We are in recess.